Since the dawn of time, magic was the ultimate flex, a dark art mastered only by the chosen elite. Only a handful of daredevils had the guts to mess with its mysteries. Some called it a divine gift from God. Others weren't sure if it was real, or just a gorgeous lie. Spotting a magician in the wild was like finding a unicorn, but centuries later, the script completely flipped. For the first time in the Burial Empire's history, a guy who'd been slinging spells since he was a kid took the throne of a major superpower. It looked like the end of the mage era, but fate had a twisted plot twist waiting. Deep in a suffocating dungeon, shadows danced against the walls from flickering torches, squatting in the gloom. The guard taunted the prisoner, sneering that magic was a crutch for the weak and pathetic bottom feeders of society. Before him lay a young man locked down in unbreakable shackles. No cheat codes could get him out of these chains. His wrists were bound tight, his body a map of bruises and cuts. He was completely running on empty, his long white locks dragging in the dirt. This was Jan, with a voice dripping in annoyance. He told the guard crone that he hadn't changed a bit, shooting him a bitter smirk right into that cold stare. Confused, the guard barked back, demanding to know what the hell the prisoner was hinting at. Jan sensed the setup. Flashback to his childhood, he remembered the vibe. The belief that most mages were born dirt poor. Back then, he thought Crone was just looking out for him. Crone used to drill it into his head. Hide your powers, kid, or get kicked out and humiliated right here in the mansion. But now the truth hit him. The hero realized the servant was green with envy over low-tier magic, and the moment Jan called him out on it, the overseer looked like he'd been slapped. Enraged by the truth, Crone cocked his arm back, screaming at the kid to shut his mouth, and smashed his fist into Jan's face with everything he had. He couldn't hold back the rage. When the boy crumpled to the floor wasted, Crone yelled that it didn't matter anyway because he held all the cards now, stomping his boot onto Jan's head. He declared that Jan was just an obstacle that needed to be deleted from existence, glaring daggers at him. Crone sneered that the kid seemed to have a death wish. Drawing his sword, he announced it was time to wrap this up, claiming he had zero choice. He didn't let up, promising that as a relative he'd make the kill quick and painless. Jan stared down the steel blade, eyes going wide. Suddenly, a phantom wind ripped through the corridor, making the candle flames dance wildly as footsteps rushed through the dungeon's blacked-out hallways. Right on cue, a servant burst in telling the warden that Duke Hillen had sent urgent news. This needed a response like yesterday. Grinding his teeth, Crone spun around, absolutely furious that his moment to finish Jan was ruined. Leaving the young man sprawling on the cold stone, he barked at the servant that he'd be right there and stormed toward the exit. A beat later, the hero pushed himself up, unable to process that his life of brutal struggles was ending like this. Replaying the past, he felt he'd done everything he could, just hoping anyone would keep the memory alive of Duke Jan Veroshin. But his strength was fading fast, blacking out. The world turned into a blurry haze. Through the void, a voice pierced the darkness. A stranger was screaming, calling him, "Your Highness," begging him to wake up, her voice shaking with fear. Jan snapped his eyes open and saw Nian. "How did you get here?" he rasped. But the girl cut him off. No time for lore dumps, they had to move. He stopped her, confessing that she was the reason. He'd leveled up to become a magician and eventually the Emperor. Gazing at the moon glowing through the barred window, head low and tears welling up, he admitted defeat. He was done fighting. He was ready to let it go. Neon looked at him, totally baffled, asking if he'd forgotten the Mage Tower next to the Second Imperial Palace. "You used to hide and cry there as a kid," she insisted, swearing that if he could just get there, he had a shot at survival. Back in the day, he always listened to her. They'd geeked out over magic books together, cracking the codes of ancient spells. She didn't know the full story now, but grabbing his shoulders, she looked him dead in the eye, believing he could handle this. Suddenly, the room exploded in blinding yellow light, and a protective dome materialized out of nowhere. Jan panicked. What is happening? Then he saw it crimson, streaking down her arm. She was tracing sigils with her own blood, right onto the freezing stone floor. Terrified, he screamed for her to kill the spell. Immediately, this was a one-way ticket to tragedy. But the girl shot back that it was too late. The blood price was paid, and not even she could pause the download now. In a split second, a blinding lightning bolt tore through the room, followed by a deafening, earth-shaking boom. Crone kicked the door down, screaming in horror. "What the hell are you doing?" Pure terror flooded his gaze as the dungeon lit up. A bizarre, arcane energy pulsed through the air, chasing away the shadows with a blinding glow. The ritual was locked in. Naum flashed a calm smile, whispering that the divine never hands us a challenge we can't handle. But the servant looming behind her didn't care for speeches. Schwing. The blade came down, painting the cold stone floor with a gruesome splash of crimson. The blood slicked across the slabs, sending a wave of horror through the room. With one brutal strike, Kron silenced the girl forever. Jan froze, his soul shattering as he watched her lifeless body crumble onto the dungeon's unforgiving pavement. Staring at the corpse, his mind rejected reality. This had to be a nightmare, a twisted, endless loop of hell he couldn't wake up from. The executioner raised his gore-soaked blade, sneering that the kid better start praying because he'd never see sunlight again. Another spray of red coated the floor. The ruthless assassin didn't hesitate, cutting him down right where he stood. But death, that was just the prologue. As the darkness took him, the girl's final words about faith and trials echoed in his skull like a prophecy. Memories hit him like shrapnel. Fragments of a life he was leaving behind flashed before his eyes. He saw his reign as the supreme emperor ruling with an iron fist. He saw the quiet days with Naum, hidden away in their secret sanctuary of magic. Then the betrayal, thrown into a dungeon, clueless about his alleged crime. The last thing he saw was her smile. It flickered out in an instant, leaving nothing but a bitter, tragic memory. Then the magic took over. He felt weightless, drifting through the void as his physical form dissolved and his soul began to knit itself back together. When his eyes snapped open, he caught his reflection. He was staring at his younger self, rewound by decades. He blinked, stunned by the miracle. Outside, golden sunlight pierced through the pine trees, bathing the world in a deceptive, peaceful glow. It was almost too perfect. Nestled in the forest was a massive estate, screaming old money and power. Fountains, manicured gardens, it was a paradise. Until the Count's booming voice shattered, the vibe echoing down the marble halls. His words were venomous, bouncing off the walls. He glared at Jan, practically spitting with rage. "You can't even walk straight," he barked, commanding the boy to stand up immediately. Zero tolerance for weakness. Nearby, the Countess and a bratty kid snickered. "We only took in this charity case because of his mother," they mocked. "He's useless," the lady scoffed, asking the Count if he seriously considered this loser his son. "Watch your mouth in front of Sir Moline," the Count snapped at her. Jan tried to push himself up, but the room spun like a carousel. His brain was fried. Where was he? Who were these people? He tried to ask, voice weak. But the Count just yelled at him to get on his feet. Finally standing, Jan scanned the lavish, unfamiliar room, asking why everyone was looking at him like he was a disease. He glanced at a nearby mirror, and his blood ran cold. He wasn't just younger, he was in a completely different body. Eyes popping, he looked around in shock. This was real. The Count cut through his panic with a voice dripping in malice, telling Jan to stop embarrassing the family and act like a noble in front of Sir Moline, or his future was toast. Emperor what? Emperor Jan was totally lost, but decided to keep his mouth shut and play along. The Count, annoyed by his blank stare, whipped out an imperial decree to prove his point. "I didn't show you this before because you're too stupid to read," the man spat. Jan frowned. As the real emperor, he knew he never signed that. Stunned, he stood there, mind racing. Who stole his throne? Whose body was this? Then his eyes locked onto the date and his heart stopped. The numbers didn't make sense. His entire reality crashed down around him. Year 1100. He realized with a jolt this was 98 years before he was even born. Before he could process the time travel, someone snatched the document from his grip. Jan froze, whiplashed by the chaos. It was Chell, the bratty brother, glaring at him with pure irritation. "Why stare at it when you can't even read, idiot?" Chell scoffed. The Count marched ahead, focused on the mission. "I pulled strings to get the central administrator here," the Count grumbled. Behind Jan, maids whispered, "He's acting weird today, isn't he?" They watched him like a ticking time bomb. Jan glanced at a clock, trying to ground himself. Year 1100. He was stuck in a history book, clueless about the current emperor everyone kept worshipping. Back in the mirror, the stranger's face mocked him. It felt like the universe was playing a sick, twisted prank. Suddenly, a vision hit him, Naum, the pocket watch time unraveling in reverse. The gears clicked. He finally understood that Naum's spell hadn't just saved him. It had rewritten history itself. It hit him hard. Her spell had actually worked, rewinding the clock and dragging him back a whole century into the past. Outside, it was peak summer, with sunlight blasting through the mansion windows to reveal a manicured, vibrant green garden. Right in front of the kid sat a loaded plate, gourmet meat, and fresh veggies that looked straight out of a magazine. The spread looked insane, smelling so good it was practically intoxicating. Yang sliced off a chunk, savoring a flavor that was worlds apart from the slop he'd been surviving on in prison. The Countess and his big brother Chell stared at him, eyes wide and totally shook like they were watching an alien eat. Wiping his mouth, Yang didn't get the vibe check. After starving in a cell, he was programmed to eat slow and careful. Moline, swishing a glass of wine, flashed a smooth smile and broke the silence. He praised the kid's elite table manners, noting that the Sir clearly had some serious class. The Count pushed for a chat with the Emperor, and the guest guaranteed he'd make it happen. Then Moline pivoted, noting with interest. That philosophy was the hot trend right now, asking Yang for his take. But then, like he was setting a trap, he suddenly grilled the older son first, asking for his favorite philosopher, which left Chell completely frozen and embarrassed. The guy racked his brain for a single name, but his mind was empty, static, total confusion. Watching his brother panic, Yang clocked the game. Moline was stress testing the family's education level. To save the awkward silence, our hero dropped the name Feline, leaving the Sir stunned. He couldn't believe the kid actually knew the thinker's deep cuts. Smiling Yang kept the flow, explaining how the sage's humanistic vibes. were the key to understanding a true king's path. Moline was absolutely loving it. While the countess ate in silence, the count laughed, claiming the gentleman was just hyping them up, brushing it off as too simple. But dropping the smile, the guest got dead serious. The count's son was a genius. Not just the emperor, but even the barbarians would be taking notes on him. That triggered Yang. Barbarians. He started connecting the dots on who they were talking about. They had to mean the Night Clan, those terrifying neighbors. There was only one zone, called Brock, the dangerous buffer line between the clan's warriors and the Empire. Lost in the sauce, the hero asked if the rumors were true. Had the family really signed a peace treaty with those warmongers? Suddenly, his dad gripped his arm, snapping him back to reality and cutting off his dark spiral about the future. Beaming, the count said he was sure the kid was going to be their symbol of peace. But Yang knew the real code he was destined to be. Handed over to the savages. To keep the vibe chill, the hero smiled and nodded along with his father, even though his gut was screaming the opposite. Outside, serene. Inside, a total drama storm broke out, shattering the fragile family peace. The eldest son cornered Yang, screaming that being adopted didn't make him a real noble, and he had zero right to humiliate him like that. The hero didn't flinch, firing back that if he wasn't part of the squad, Chell would be the one getting exiled, not him. That snapped Chell's last nerve. He grabbed a vase, roaring in rage, and swung at the kid, furious that Yang dared to clap back. But mid-swing, his grip failed, the vase slipped, smashing against the tiles and sending glass shrapnel flying everywhere. While Yang stood there silent, his brother screamed that he'd die, just like his mother, that a piece of trash. Didn't get to talk back, only obey orders. Hearing that filth, Yang's blood boiled. The disrespect toward his mom flipped a switch, and his heart screamed for justice. A split second later, a weird glow ignited in the kid's eyes. For the first time, he didn't just want to win, he wanted pure revenge. Calling his brother arrogant, Yang unleashed his magic and the whole room got blasted by a blinding yellow aura blazing like an inferno. Blinded and totally caught off guard, Chell threw his hands up trying to shield himself from the freaky sorcery. Then, he crumpled to the floor, eyes popping out of his head. Real magic. The kid actually had powers. His brain couldn't process it. He thought he was tripping like it was a nightmare or some kind of sudden madness. Yang's voice dropped cold and malicious, warning his brother to watch his mouth and stop spewing poison about his mother with that long, nasty tongue. Looming over him, he threatened to cut that tongue right out his voice, dripping with danger. His gaze scorched everything in sight. Terrified, Chell curled up on the floor, covering his head and begging Yang to back off and leave him alone. Fearing his brother was about to strike, the hero caught a sudden noise behind the door and whipped around, instinct screaming that someone was beelining straight for the office, where their showdown was unfolding. Moline busted into the room and, totally failing to read the room, suggested the boys chill out and grab some tea. But when the servant swung that door wide, Jan's mana was still saturating, the atmosphere thick with static electricity and tension, a glow illuminating every corner. Frozen in the doorway, the man's jaw hit the floor, witnessing a level of power he'd never encountered in his entire life. Moments later, the count and his wife stormed in, clocked the gentleman's paralyzed state, and demanded to know what was going on. But Moline was tongue-tied, absolutely shook by the spectacle he'd just witnessed. Kicking the door fully open, the father bellowed, demanding an explanation, his voice dropping an octave with pure menace. Sprawled on the floor, the eldest son scrambled to stand and speak, but he was trembling like a leaf, too terrified to spill the truth about what just went down. Closing the distance, Jan gripped his brother's shoulder and said with a chillingly bright smile that he'd just warned him to watch out for the vase. Spinning around, he kept that grin plastered on and told CL to hop up while the boy just gaped at him, eyes wide with shock and confusion. Extending a hand, the hero offered a lift, while the spectators stood there processing the scene, in total bewilderment. Glaring from the hallway, furious, the count ordered Hannah to drag Yan back to his quarters, declaring he had zero patience left for this kind of drama. The dark-haired maid scrambled to obey, looking ready to haul him off, asking and claiming he couldn't act with the dignity a nobleman is supposed to flex. Catching their exchange, Moline tensed up, sensing the vibes were off and suspecting this situation was about to spiral into something dangerous. The group trudged through the hallways of the annex building, which felt way more cramped than the main mansion, and looked way cheaper. Inside was a tiny room with a basic bed and wardrobe, just raw wood, zero aesthetics, zero luxury. When Jan pushed the door open, the sheer mediocrity of the place hit him instantly. There wasn't a single thing here that screamed noble status. Just as he was stepping inside, the maid's voice stopped him in his tracks. Confused, he pivoted toward her, waiting for the tea. Out of the blue, she mentioned a letter from his mom, noting that the original host used to sob every single day, begging to send a message out. But the kid had been trapped, and Jan felt a pang of pity for the tragic fate of the body he was now piloting. Jan realized the poor guy had been living like a prisoner in his own home, with no exit strategy. Keeping his voice steady, he promised Hannah the crying days were over, and told her to relax because he was operating on a whole new level now. Suddenly, she pivoted to asking about his meals. The hero looked at her totally lost, not getting the connection. Bowing deep, she confessed she had 5 siblings at home, and they survived solely on the leftovers Jan gave them. So she was basically begging him to keep the charity flowing. Bewildered, the guy wondered if he was seriously obligated to give away his own lunch. He stayed quiet, running the calculations in his head and weighing the pros and cons. After a beat of silence, he agreed to hand over the food, but dropped a single condition on the table. This caught the maid off guard. Flashing a smirk, he told Hannah she'd owe him a favor down the line. After a moment of hesitation, the girl confidently agreed, promising to check back in the evening. She thanked her master profusely and bailed, leaving Jan alone with his spiraling thoughts. Once the latch clicked shut, the guy clutched his head and cursed under his breath, realizing he was stuck in a massive mess with no clear game plan for the next move. Knowing magic usually teleports you to your spawn point, the hero couldn't figure out why he'd been yeeted so far away into a stranger's body. Trying to figure out why he was stuck in the past, Jan realized he needed straight answers fast. And the only spot to get that intel was the Ministry of Magic at the Imperial Palace. The hero decided he had to get there no matter what. Brainstorming hard, he tried to figure out how to infiltrate such a fortress, but he knew it was non-negotiable. If he didn't pull this off, his last shot at fixing this was toast. Suddenly, the room was bathed in a weird sunset-colored aura, making the shabby space feel almost cozy. Opening his palm, he watched a fireball ignite, flooding the room with intense heat and dancing flames. Clenching his fist, Jan realized this vessel had serious mana control and could actually tank the magical output. The insane part was that he'd possessed a guy who had massive untapped potential from day one. To evolve into a god-tier mage and a legendary spellcaster, memories of his past life as an emperor crashed into his mind, and the realization hit him like a truck. They shared the exact same name. It was a glitch in the Matrix. Unsettled and spiraling, he couldn't wrap his head around how such a bizarre, twisted coincidence could actually be real. It felt like destiny playing a cruel joke. Suddenly, Hannah's voice cut through the silence from the hallway. She was there to drop off dinner, but Yang told her to just leave the tray on the floor. He wasn't in the mood for company. Moments later, he cracked the door open. Staring down at the pathetic meal on the doorstep, he let out a long, heavy sigh. Talk about a downgrade. The royal feast consisted of a single crust of bread and a glass of milk. Yang realized instantly that someone had skimmed a finder's fee off his rations before they even got to his door. Even accounting for the theft, looking at that sad excuse for a dinner, he had to wonder if they were actively trying to starve him. His mind drifted back to lunch with Mayor Mullen tables groaning under the weight of real food. He missed that feeling of being actually full. But even amidst that banquet, he'd noticed something glaringly absent: gulu. The superfood that was the absolute backbone of the burial diet was nowhere to be found. That fruit had been the ultimate survival hack for centuries, saving countless families from starvation. Crazy to think it used to be treated like a useless weed, because the pits were toxic. But once they cracked the code on how to eat it safely, mortality rates plummeted by 85%. Gripping the tray, it dawned on Yang. That breakthrough, it wasn't supposed to happen for another 50 years. Nobody in this timeline had a clue. If he just showed them how to prep the gulu correctly right now, he could single-handedly wipe out the famine across the empire. Shaking off the thought, he headed to the Count's study. The Count dropped a bombshell in 2 days. Heavy hitters from the capital were arriving for a high-stakes reception. Yang put on his best poker face and promised to be on his best behavior. He wouldn't tarnish the Brock family name. Not in front of the VIPs anyway. Then the Count mentioned a package had shown up. It was from his mother. Yang froze, eyes going wide. That was unexpected. The Count pulled a small white cloth bag from his desk, a token from a mother to her estranged son. Just a few coins and a letter tucked inside. He tossed it to Yang with a patronizing suggestion. Get your tutor to read it for you. As Yang fingered the fabric of the bag, the Count added a carrot on the stick if he played nice. He'd be allowed to visit his mother before shipping off to school. Yang nodded obediently, but the moment was cut short. A servant slipped into the room, whispering something urgent to the Duke. The vibe in the room shifted instantly. The Duke didn't say a word. He just sat there cold as ice, masking whatever adrenaline was pumping through his veins. Then he shot up and stormed out, leaving Yang in the dust. The room fell silent, save for the scent of burning wax and the settle of old parchment. The door clicked shut. Moments later, muffled voices drifted through the wall. Yang's curiosity spiked, mixed with a twinge of nerves. They were gossiping about some cold boy. Yang stared at the door, trying to piece together the puzzle. Who were they talking about? His eyes darted to a massive stack of documents left unguarded on the desk. Opportunity knocked. He crept closer. Making a split-second decision, he grabbed a few sheets to scan the data. He needed answers. His eyes raced across the pages, hunting for a smoking gun. Joke was on them. Everyone thought he was illiterate trash, but he'd been reading for years. As he cross-referenced the ledgers, his jaw dropped. The numbers were a mess. None of this added up. It was a classic cook-the-books scheme. Yang realized with a start his father was embezzling tax money, stealing straight from the imperial treasury. It was insanely bold. Suddenly, Sir Molin's arrival made perfect sense. The capital smelled a rat, and that rat was the Duke. Kriak. The door handle turned. Yang's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He was milliseconds away from being busted. Panic flared, but he forced his brain to work. He channeled his mana, focusing on a single outcome. Snap. Every light in the office died instantly. The room plunged into pitch blackness. It was a Hail Mary pass to hide his snooping. The Count stepped into the void, clearly confused. What the hell happened to the lights? He squinted into the dark. The servant right behind him chimed in nervous. My lord, we just replaced those lamps. Must be a faulty batch. Assuming it was just bad luck, the Count ordered the candles to be lit. Seizing the moment, Yang let out a terrified shriek. The Duke spun around, startled out of his skin, actually looking rattled as he tried to calm the scared boy down. The butler stammered, claiming he just stumbled over nothing. The master, barely paying attention to the clumsy excuse, barked at him to stack the scattered papers and make them presentable. Then the man froze, spotting Jan standing there, eyes widening in total shock, assuming the kid had bounced hours ago, and cleared out of the office. With a jagged motion, the Count marched to the window and ripped back the heavy velvet drapes. Sunlight blasted into the room, nuking the shadows and exposing everything. He shot a demanding glare at the young man, silently screaming for an explanation, but our hero stayed stone cold, keeping his mouth shut to avoid leaking any intel. He stepped back from the desk, freezing in a humble pose, while his father drilled holes into him with a gaze full of ice and deep suspicion. In his gripping hands, Jan clutched the coin pouch from his mom, like a shield bracing for a sword strike. Suddenly, the Count's eyes snapped to the desk. The papers. They were shifted. The layout was wrong, and his gut instantly screamed that his son was up to something shady. Vibrating with irritation and rising fury, the man demanded to know what the hell the boy was doing. Jan just hit him with a chill, innocent smile. You never told me to leave, father. Dropping into his chair, the Count announced that the unearthly clan was pressing for a letter signed personally by Jan, and the young man blinked, feigning confusion. Why, those barbarians are a total headache, he deflected. The Count waved it off, ordering the hero to write to them occasionally. Don't worry, your tutor will dictate every word for you. Dismissing the topic, he signaled for his son to get out. The young man followed orders like a good soldier, careful not to trigger any more of the Count's paranoia. He slipped out the heavy door, groaning shut behind him, sending a hollow echo bouncing through the space. Pausing in the hallway, clutching the letter, he overheard the Count sneering through the wall, wondering why Jan's mother wasted expensive paper writing to a blind kid, or if she was even writing at all. Cracking open the message, Jan read that she was thriving, all thanks to Durga's protection, and she sweetly asked how he was doing. Striding down the corridor, the hero scanned every single line, hunting for subtext and decoding the hidden layers beneath the ink. The real message hit him. His mother was thrilled about his new family setup and dropped a weird request if he ever hit the distant desert. She needed a favor. Jan smirked, folding the note. His gut feeling about the weird vibes was dead on. Now, he just needed the hard evidence to back it up. That evening, as the moon muted the sky, VIPs from the capital rolled up to the mansion, and the whole Brock clan threw a massive flex of a reception. Bowing low, Daegor gushed to the Count, claiming it was a massive honor to step foot in his house and dine at his table. Another guest, Mac, smooth-talked the Countess, kissing her hand with a flourish, earning a charmed smile and her respect. Outside, the garden pond glittered with water lilies, capturing the reflection of the stars like someone had poured the liquid night sky into the water. At dinner, Sir Malin hyped up Jan's magnificent drip, and the young man replied he'd been dying for this meeting, mostly to get the tea on life in the capital. Mac grinned, leaning in to ask, what sparked such intense curiosity? A calculated glint flashed in the hero's eyes. He asked, what exactly do they eat at court? He claimed it was crucial to understand how high society and the royals actually lived. Daegor shrugged, keeping it casual. Nothing wild. The rich stuff their faces, and the poor survive on scraps. He admitted that even the nobles were bored, lacking variety in their menus. And the young man pressed on, asking exactly what kind of food situation he meant. Seizing the moment, he dropped the bomb. What if a new food, something considered useless, could actually feed the masses? The suggestion hit the room like a stun grenade. The guests froze, jaws dropped, total silence. Mac broke the tension with a chuckle, suggesting Jan pitch that wild idea to the prince, betting he'd love something so bold and innovative. Feigning ignorance, John asked, who, claiming he'd never heard of a prince with a foodie obsession. Daegor explained that the Empire had His Highness Gale, a royal known for hunting down fresh talent. It clicked. Jan instantly realized they were talking about Gale Verosian, the guy who sparked the Mage Rebellion and crashed and burned in defeat. Suddenly, the pieces fit. These ambassadors were Gale's operatives, circling like sharks for their own payout. They grinned at him, promising the young man he was destined for the big leagues. Getting cozy with the prince sounded nice on paper, but our hero knew the score: never let your enemies within striking distance. They were just pawns to be played. Clinking his wine glass against the table, Milton realized something with a jolt. The night was evaporating way too fast. He needed to hit pause and pick up this high-stakes chat when the clock wasn't ticking down. With silky manners, he asked if the Count would mind a tiny request. The host, furrowing his brow, seemed skeptical but listened. He gave the green light. Then Milton dropped a curveball. He wanted a private stroll. Just him and the young master. You mean Jan? The Count asked, totally thrown off. Milton nodded. The Count insisted on sending Chell along as a chaperone, which actually played right into Milton's hand. But the kid was terrified of being alone with his own brother, dabbing beads of cold sweat from his forehead with a napkin. He stumbled out into the garden, voice trembling as he asked if they were close. He was fighting a losing battle to mask his sheer exhaustion. Mac turned, confirming they were seconds away, but he couldn't ignore the obvious. The Count's eldest son looked like he was about to pass out. Feeling the weight of Milton's stare, he made a judgment call. Chell needed a breather, and he needed it now. The guy was practically a zombie. Degore guided the wobbling heir to a bench, practically holding him up. We'll catch up with Sir and Jan, he promised, just trying to keep the kid from hitting the dirt. Alone at last. Our hero flashed a knowing smile mid-stride. He knew exactly how this game was played. He coolly asked the guards to watch over his brother, then pressed on with his guest. As they gazed out over the glassy surface of the lake, Milton couldn't shake a disturbing memory. That golden shimmer he'd seen in the kid's eyes before. It wasn't just strange, it was bone-chilling. They paused at a gazebo with a killer view. Milton cut the small talk, locking eyes with him. Are you a mage? He demanded. The question hung in the air like thick fog. Awkward silence ensued, while Jan's mind raced. Should he spill the beans? Admitting his powers was like walking a tightrope without a net. One slip and he's dead. He chose silence. Forcing a tight smile, he played dumb. I have no idea what you're talking about. He had to keep his poker face absolute to hide the adrenaline spiking in his veins. Milton's tone shifted to warm and fuzzy. He claimed Prince Gale was actually a fan of mages, calling magic a magnificent gift, capable of rewriting history and shifting the destiny of nations. But Jan wasn't buying the sales pitch. Is that really the only reason you're so interested? He asked, his voice dripping with irony and a healthy dose of suspicion. Milton looked genuinely confused and asked for clarification. Our hero didn't hold back. You're interested in my power for your own sake, not just the prince's. Glancing at his own reflection in the water, he pivoted. I'm sure that's not the only thing on your mind, is it? Milton froze. His eyes darted nervously, betraying a deep hesitation. It was like he was terrified to voice the real question, the one burning a hole in his tongue. Jan decided to rip off the band-aid. You're here about the stolen tax funds, aren't you? That hit the mark. The man practically twitched with nerves, but Jan calmed him down, admitting, Relax. I actually need a favor from you too. His expression hardened. Let's make a deal. Milton was floored. Are you seriously offering me the Brax family's secret ledgers? He stammered. Those documents, they could obliterate this entire family. Jan just smirked. The question is, what are you bringing to the table? After all, embezzlement wasn't a victimless crime, and Jan was in the blast radius. Milton tried to play the technicality card, reminding Jan he wasn't officially a family member yet. If I stall the adoption paperwork, he explained, you'd dodge the legal fallout and the military draft. Jan turned his back on him, a confident grin spreading across his face. Wrong. That's not what I want at all. He waved off the documents like they were nothing. Those papers, they're just leverage. I'm not looking for a loophole. I need immunity from the Emperor's court. And one more thing, he added. I want land. My own territory fully deeded to me. He dropped the bombshell. I'll join the warrior clan. No adoption necessary. I just need a shield from suspicion and someone to watch my back. Milton looked at him like he was crazy. Do you have any idea where the clan lives? Or what kind of brutal life that is? Jan didn't flinch. He knew exactly what he was signing up for. If I blow the whistle on the money, my father will come for me immediately, he reasoned. I need a fortress. And having an army of elite warriors on my side, that's a solid survival strategy. He leaned in, eyes gleaming. So, will you take me and my mother under your wing? Milton let out a long sigh, clearly overwhelmed. He dodged the question, mumbling about needing to check on Chell, who was still MIA in the garden. Jan smiled, letting him off the hook. He realized he'd come on too strong. The guy wasn't ready to seal a deal of this magnitude just yet. With a polite bow, Jan said, I'll hang back here. Milton nodded, leaving the boy alone to take in the view of the home he was plotting to escape. The heavy conversation ended, and the old man vanished into the shadows, leaving the young man solitary in the silence. Left with nothing but spiraling thoughts and a silent scheme that would dictate his destiny, it hit Yang right then. This was the tipping point. The Brock dynasty had crumbled, forcing him to accelerate his timeline. He knew the palace gates would be slammed shut against someone of his status, so he had to snatch any opening he could find, no matter how lethal the gamble might be. He had already planted the double-entry ledger on Moline, successfully framing the family for corruption. And now the endgame was clear, seize total control of the Count's estate. His knuckles turned white as he clenched his fist, fueled by a savage resolve. Realizing he was done being a pawn in someone else's twisted game, it was time to rewrite his own fate. But first, he needed a squad. Yang's priority one. locking down an alliance with the clan of otherworldly warriors to secure their raw power. Deep in strategy mode, he stared blankly at the glassy surface of the garden pond, letting the silence settle. The moon's reflection shimmering on the water seemed to trigger a decision. He spun around and froze. A woman in a flowing black cloak stood there, making his heart miss a beat. It felt like a hallucination, eerie and impossible. His eyes went wide, brain refusing to process the image. Right there in front of him was the last person he expected to see. She stood with her back turned, clutching a pot containing a vibrant red lily, like she was waiting to gift it to someone special. Yang didn't hesitate. He rushed forward and grabbed her shoulder, fingers trembling, terrified she might vanish like smoke. But she was warm. She was real. The woman yelped, spinning around in panic, her face a chaotic mix of shock, pure joy, and heartbreaking longing. Yang managed a soft smile, asking how she had been. Instant tears pooled in her eyes. She could not wrap her head around the fact that her son was actually standing there. Her voice cracked with bitterness as she asked about his life, admitting she was overjoyed to see him, even if this reunion was destined to be fleeting and painful. She explained that Hannah had delivered a secret message telling her to come to the third pond to find her boy. She had thought it was a cruel joke at first, but the girl had been so intense, so sure that this meeting could happen right now. Desperate for hope, she had agreed. Cupping Yang's face in her hands, she searched his eyes, and he quickly reassured her that he was okay, confirming he had received her package. He apologized for the radio silence, explaining that his heart ached to reach out, but the situation made it too dangerous to write. Then a thought snapped into his mind. He had to ask her something crucial while he had her right there looking him dead in the eye. He pulled out the heavy bag of coins, asking if she was the sender. Her confusion was immediate. She had never touched that kind of gold in her life. Yang pressed the bag into her hands, telling her to keep it and get ready to move, promising he would send word through Hannah about the exact extraction date. She clutched the bag, anxiety spiking. She asked if something terrible was going down, her mother's intuition screaming of danger. Dropping to her knees, she begged him if he needed to escape the Count's hellhole, he should just run, because she had sent him there with a broken heart once before. Tears streamed down her face as she told him that, if the suffering was too much, he should flee rather than take more abuse. Yang grabbed her hands, trying to ground her, promising he could handle the heat, and would do whatever it took to keep them both safe. Suddenly, she stopped catching a strange fire lighting up his eyes, and she pointed it out excitedly, seeing it as a sign of transformation. Yang grinned, assuring her that running was not in the cards, telling her he was staying right here because he had a master plan. Squeezing her hand, he needed her to promise one thing. She had to follow his instructions exactly, or they would have no future. Just then, the voices of Milton and his guests echoed nearby, calling his name. Terrified they would spot her, he whispered that he had to vanish. As he pulled away, he told her to grab more ghoulie seeds, insisting they would be a game-changer down the line, and essential for their survival. He let go of her hand, telling her to stay safe, but she stopped him, desperate to give him something real. She held out the pot of red lilies, urging him to take it, a gentle reminder of how he used to love tending to these blooms. A wave of gratitude hit him. She had brought the one thing that truly felt like childhood and home. The next day, strolling down the hall with Chel, Yang noted his brother looked wrecked and mentioned he had spotted a weakness in him yesterday. Chel looked bewildered, asking if they were seriously starting training today. Yang shot back, confirming that father had greenlit their joint sessions. He reassured him, promising the first round would be a breeze, and that the captain would scale it to their level. Meanwhile, a stranger lurked nearby, listening in with a grin that revealed jagged yellow teeth. The captain got right in the young noble's face, staring him down like a predator sizing up a meal. Stepping into his personal space, he demanded to know what business brought him to this hellhole. The young master didn't flinch. He just said he was there to scope out the arena, the breeding ground for the next generation of killers. The captain locked eyes with him, skeptical. "You ain't been here before," he grunted, catching a whiff of booze on the kid's breath. "And you're already hammered." That arrogance snapped something inside Chel. He didn't back down, admitting straight up that he was out of shape, a total mess. But he wanted to fix it. He needed to train to learn how to fight so he wouldn't get pushed around ever again. Acting like he was insulted by the honesty, the man spun around. "Follow me," he barked, promising to expose the dark underbelly of the training grounds. First stop the sprawling main grounds, then the gritty warehouses and tents where fighters crashed after brutal horseback drills. He was about to keep rambling, but a deafening bang cut through the air. Yang and Chel froze. Confused, they spun around and saw a nightmare scenario. A guy cracking a whip at a row of half-naked kids doing headstands. "Who are they?" Yang asked. The captain shrugged it off. "Just orphans." Then he dropped a cold truth bomb. If Yang hadn't been born lucky, he'd be right there in the dirt with them. Out of nowhere, Chel shouted at Theo to stop the beating. Yang stared at his brother, shocked the quiet kid was finally finding his voice. Among the suffering bodies, one stood out, a redhead. While the others collapsed, this kid stood tall, eating the pain like it was nothing. The guard glared at the visitors, screaming his head off, trying to assert dominance. The captain sneered, pointing out the redhead. "That's Barrack. He didn't have a single nice thing to say about the kid, basically calling him trash." Suddenly, agonizing screams ripped through the air. The group instinctively backed off, trying to figure out what kind of horror show was causing that racket. It was Barrick. The kid was roaring, and Chell realized this redhead was dangerous. A literal ticking time bomb. Best to keep a distance unless you wanted trouble. Rubbing his temples, the captain admitted that despite the kid's attitude, he was useful. An asset. Whoosh, the whip cut through the air again. But the captain intercepted Theo just in time, stopping him from flaying the orphan alive and causing permanent damage. Barrick finally crumbled, dropping to his knees. The captain shook his head. Zero technique. Weak, clearly, not built for this life. The kid looked up, eyes burning with pure hate and rage, fantasizing about tearing his tormentors apart. Walking away, the captain didn't hold back, letting his toxic thoughts flow. Kid's got no talent, he said. Doesn't matter how hard he tries, he's never gonna be anything. Sometimes the man preached, you just gotta know when to quit. Success isn't for everyone. Yang and Chell listened, soaking it in, but their minds were racing, measuring their own worth against those cold words. The captain caught Yang's eye. Silence. They just stared at each other, a mental chess match trying to read the other's cards. You done, the hero asked visually. Show's over, the captain said. Let's grab some shade before we get back to the grind. Glancing at the exhausted Barrick, he added, I'm done watching him struggle. Let the brat deal with the pain on his own. Sunlight hit the trees, a stark contrast to the darkness below. Yang reminded himself that could have been him down there, drowning in fear. Breaking formation, the hero stepped up. Barrick right. The redhead on the ground looked up, shocked that a noble was talking to him. Yang just smiled. Think you can stand up, we got work to do. Who the hell are you? The orphan snapped. Yang introduced himself, calm and collected. He explained he wasn't there to mock him, he was there to help. While the others watched from the sidelines, the orphan told Yang to get lost. Rude, sharp, independent. Yang liked it. Yang grabbed his chin, forcing him to look up. I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that, he whispered, testing the kid. Even beat-up Barrick moved like lightning. He broke free and dodged, showing off reflexes that were honestly terrifying. Head down, he growled at the hero to beat it. He wanted to handle his business solo, staying under the radar. Yang wasn't having it. He poured a mysterious elixir straight down the kid's throat. Magic was poison to normal people, but if you had potential, it was just a little kick. Yang watched like a hawk. How would the orphan handle the juice? Would the hidden power wake up? He needed to see if the boy could handle the surge hidden in that bottle. On the ground, Barrick convulsed. A weird energy surged through his veins, heat tension, raw power. Boom! His pupils flared up. Yang felt it immediately, a faint hum of magic. His hunch was dead on. The kid wasn't trash. He was holding the energy of a magic swordsman. Jan's gut instinct was spot on. The raw power wasn't just sitting there. It was surging, reacting violently to the magical stimulus. Out of nowhere, Barrick's hand blurred. Smack! He swatted the flask away with terrifying precision and lethal speed. The sudden violence sent a jolt of fear through the young man as the container sailed through the air and shattered against the floor. Jan froze, locking eyes with Barrick, watching a sudden uncontrollable wildfire of rage ignite in the boy's glare and body language. What did you lace this with? Barrick snarled, his voice shaking with pure venom, eyes narrowing in absolute distrust. Despite the aggression, Jan didn't flinch. He held Barrick's gaze, voice steady and soothing. It's clean. Just water, careful not to trigger the orphan further. But beneath the calm facade, Jan was analyzing every micro-movement, tracking the hidden energy pulsing off the boy. Seeing the color return to the prisoner's face, the hero abruptly cut the tension. You're better. I'm out, he dropped, leaving Barrick completely thrown. Barrick scrambled to his feet, staring at his own hands in shock. He flexed, his body felt supercharged, like his energy reserves had just tripled. Wait, he opened his mouth to demand answers, but Jan was already ghosting him. The door clicked shut, leaving the orphan alone in the silence. As Jan strode away, mind racing over the bizarre power spike, he didn't look back at the orphan burning a hole in his retreating figure. Unable to process the strange vibes, Jan's eyes drifted to a flower nearby. A thought clicked, he needed to write a letter to his mom. He penned the usual updates, I'm great, handling everything fine, before a specific song lyric drifted into his head. He scribbled a poetic line about the moon shining through the void, a coded message that darkness doesn't last forever, so she wouldn't stress over him. The ink flowed onto premium parchment, every stroke, deliberate and neat, pouring his love into the calligraphy, so she'd feel his presence. Right beside him, his tutor hovered, eyes scanning the page like a hawk for any spelling slip-ups. He tweaked a phrase here and there, ensuring the message was crystal clear and error-free. As the tutor stood to leave, Jan offered a genuine nod. Thanks for the assist. Seriously helps keep my head straight. But something felt off. You're always dashing off, Jan noted, eyes narrowing slightly. Got a secret life I don't know about. The tutor froze, confused. Jan studied him. The vibe was definitely weird lately, like the guy was hiding something. The man stammered, caught off guard. Jan waved it off with a casual smile. Relax, I'm just messing with you. You don't owe me explanations, Jan added. Just don't let the rush mess with your head. The tutor shoveled papers into his bag a little too quickly, dodging the question. Jan caught the nervous tick immediately. Everything's fine, the man lied, but beads of cold sweat on his forehead screamed otherwise as he scrambled for an excuse. Words failed him. Yan just watched him struggle for a second before sighing and dropping back into his chair. Shouldering his bag, the teacher muttered a quick goodbye and bolted. Yan sat in the quiet until a flash of white on the floor caught his eye. He glanced down a scrap of paper fallen from the tutor's bag during his panicked exit. Yan snatched it up. Curiosity piqued. He scanned the contents. This wasn't just random trash. It was a clipped article about shifting climate patterns intel that could completely wreck his future strategies if he didn't pay attention. Cut to brutal training under a blazing sun. Yan ran alongside his brother Chell, whining every 5 seconds. Are we done yet? The coach, sweating bullets but keeping pace ahead of them, barked back. Quit whining, 40 minutes left on the clock. But the words dissolved in the heat. Chell was lagging too far behind to hear the bad news. The coach kicked it into high gear. The boys gritted their teeth, legs pumping, trying to close the gap. They were pushing their limits near a grand estate to finish the set when a blood-curdling scream shattered the afternoon. Yan whipped around, confused just in time to see Barrick launching himself at an opponent's sword raised, screaming like a banshee. The kid was a blur of motion and raw power, eyes glowing with murderous intent. Barrick brought the steel down hard, but his target was liquid, sidestepping the strike with elite-level agility. Frustrated, Barrick lunged with his free hand to grapple, but the stranger weaved out of range again. Realizing the blade wasn't enough, Barrick switched tactics, unleashing a flurry of brutal hand-to-hand strikes. This was getting messy. The victim yelped, throwing his arms up to guard his face, desperately trying to read Barrick's chaotic rhythm. Metal slammed against metal as they locked blades again, sparks flying neither side, backing down an inch. They circled, hunting for an opening. The opponent spat a curse, barely deflecting Barrick's relentless assault. Barrick needed a finisher. Masking his opening, he launched into the air, screaming a war cry as he came down. The sheer pressure forced the opponent into hyper-focus. He skidded back, overwhelmed by Barrick's drive to crush him. Enough, chill out, the guy shouted, establishing dominance and trying to shut down the brawl before it got deadly. As he turned his back to leave, a voice cut through the air. The orphan dropped the name Mayral, freezing the big guy cold. That name hit a nerve. He whipped around, furious. Who gave you permission to speak that name, trash? You don't cross that line and live. Gripping his weapon tight, Mayral glared daggers at the kid. But the orphan wasn't folding. He stood his ground, spitting out that this match wasn't over yet. He was ready to brawl until his last breath. His eyes burned with pure vengeance. He needed that win no matter the price. Pure rage fueled him. Confused by this death wish, Mayral sneered. You trying to die today, kid? He stepped closer, sizing up the boy's resolve. Was he serious? Bam. Mayral launched a brutal boot to the gut. Barrick folded like a lawn chair, totally blindsided before he could even block. Trash talk flew as Mayral loomed over him. Did I stutter the first time? The spectators on the bench roared with laughter. They loved seeing the kid fail. Mayral spat. Keep acting tough, and your life expectancy is going to drop real fast. A cold warning to the exhausted prisoner slumped by the crates. Barrick muttered, I don't want to fight. He looked defeated, desperate to end the beatdown. Silence hung heavy in the air, under the blazing high noon sun. Then a voice pierced the quiet. Barrick looked up to see Yang standing there. Annoyed, he snapped. What do you want? Recognizing the pest from earlier, Barrick waved him off. Beat it. But the hero didn't budge. You need a way to drop Mayral, Yang stated. The orphan scowled. What, you want me to play dirty? I don't roll like that, Barrick hissed. Yang just smirked his hand, resting coolly on his sword hilt. Keep yapping and you're dead, the prisoner threatened, losing patience. Yang's smile didn't fade. I actually pity you, Barrick. It wasn't an insult, it was genuine concern. That just made Barrick snap. He swung a wild fist at Yang. Whack. Yang caught the punch with one hand. Effortless. Pure speed, insane strength. He was on another level. Eyes intense, Yang made his offer. I'll give you the power you need. But you owe me a favor in return. He owned the moment. Before Barrick could argue, Yang placed a palm on the orphan's forehead. A weird light erupted from his hand. Barrick froze, eyes wide, totally paralyzed by the glow. Alien energy flooded his veins, vibrating the very air around them. A twisted grin spread across Barrick's face as he felt the juice flowing. The aura exploded outward, arcs of lightning crackled and popped in the air like a storm brewing. Yang released him and stepped back, eyes locked on his creation. Time to see what the kid would do. He didn't have to wait long. Barrick sprang up and bolted forward like a rocket. Yang watched calm as ever. Just as predicted. Mayral was walking off clueless while his former captive charged for a blindside attack. Mayral sensed it. This wasn't normal. The air crackled with a magic that definitely didn't belong to a street rat. A chill ran down his spine. Mayral spun around, mouth open to trash talk, but the words died in his throat. He couldn't process the insane energy spike. Zip. Suddenly, Barrick was right in his face. He was totally exposed. The crowd gasped. Nobody saw that coming. The tension skyrocketed. Barrick's eyes were glowing neon with arcane light. He didn't care about Mayral's fear. He was locked in destroy mode. Crack. One surgical strike sent Mayral face-planting into the dirt. Perfect precision, immense power. Nobody expected that from the scrawny prisoner. Barrick snatched Mayral by the collar, ignoring his muffled protests. Mayral tried to beg, stammering that this was crazy, but Barrick's ears were closed. He started raining fists on Mayral's face. Left, right, left. He wasn't just fighting, he was demolishing. Within seconds, the gray asphalt was painted with fresh scarlet splatter from Mayral's face. The big guy was defenseless meat. The squad on the bench watched in horror, brains short-circuiting. How did the kid get this monster strength? Realizing their boss was dying, they scrambled off the bench to help. "What the hell are you doing?" they screamed, diving in. But Barrick was in a frenzy, winding up for another kill shot. He threw the punch, but the gang tackled him just in time. They thought the kid had gone full psycho. Disbelief written all over their faces, they slammed Barrick into the dirt, desperate to restrain his wild rage. They ended the brutality, but Barrick lay there, pinned, tilting his head back to cackle like a maniac. No fear, no pain. He couldn't care less about the odds. Grinning through the dust, he rasped, "I've been waiting for this exact second. For a long time. You were an idiot to turn your back on me before finishing the job." The guy smashed his forehead into the dirt thud after thud until the rage finally simmered down to a low boil. The captain charged in, scrambling to lock down the chaos and get everyone back in line. Seeing the mess, the coach barked orders: haul Miral to the infirmary and throw Barrick in solitary before anyone else throws a punch. Then he locked eyes with a shadow on the sidelines and froze, totally paralyzed for a split second. Terrified he'd take the heat for the prisoner's brawl, he spun around to face Sir Jan, who was watching like a hawk face, completely unreadable. The captain, sweating bullets, asked if Barrick had crossed a line. Jan shrugged it off. He'd just heard a lot of noise, nothing concrete. But the vibe on the field was getting heavy. As the battered recruits were dragged off, the coach suggested calling it a day. Our hero nodded in agreement. Eyes on the orphan, Jan asked what the penalty was. The answer, a brutal flogging followed by immediate expulsion. That didn't sit right with him. Jan double-checked, realizing he wanted a totally different fate for the kid. Expulsion wasn't the worst thing, though. If the orphan was out on his own, Jan figured Barrick could actually be way more of an asset and would learn to weaponize those raw instincts. Later, Jan sat down for tea with Milton and the guests, and cut to the chase. Had they reached a verdict on the deal that would define their destiny? The seer just bowed his head in silence. Mac and Dagor exchanged confused glances, totally lost on what he was hinting at, or how it connected to their jobs. After a pause, the seer admitted the Count was a pro at this high-stakes game, so they needed hard proof and backup. Jan nodded, volunteering to gather intel on grain stockpiles, mining output in the Mona Mountains, and the tax squeeze on local farmers. Milton flashed a satisfied smile, impressed by the kid's grit, respecting how he made the tough calls when the heat was on. With a respectful bow, he acknowledged that this move would seal their fate and tipped his hat to the hero, admitting the real grind was just starting. Jan thanked Sir Milton, realizing his gut instinct had been spot on all along, grasping the gravity of their alliance. Then something caught his eye. The brooch pinned to the man's jacket was a dead ringer for the symbol on the paper the teacher dropped earlier. Jan realized there was some kind of shady backroom deal going on between them. Sipping his tea, Jan filed that info away for later, to counter their hidden agendas. Once the meeting wrapped up, he took a stroll to clear his head, strategizing his next power move and how to secure his spot at the top. Out of nowhere, a hand snatched his jacket. He didn't even have a split second to react. The assailant hauled him around the corner, with brute force crushing any chance of escape. A servant nearby heard the scuffle, but didn't bother turning around, writing it off as background noise. Totally clueless that the young master was in danger. He casually asked a coworker if they heard that sound, but the other guy just laughed it off, figuring it wasn't worth the effort to investigate. Probably just stray dogs, they agreed. Meanwhile, behind the building, Barrick had Jan pinned, showing serious guts and grip strength. Keeping his cool, the hero noted, "Hell of a greeting," and asked how the heck the orphan got there, trying to figure out the motive behind this ambush. Looking like a total psycho, the boy didn't blink, staring daggers in silence, practically vibrating with tension. Barrick finally spoke up. He'd been badgering the staff all night until the head butler gave him the green light. Jan stared back, noticing the kid's unbreaking gaze. He suspected Count Brack had pulled some strings here. Tightening his grip on Jan's collar, the orphan sneered, asking what kind of doping the hero was on, claiming Jan gave off a weird, unnatural vibe. Calm as ever, our character replied that he didn't need cheap shortcuts. Totally owning the moment, he smirked. "You're brave, Barrick, but you're not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed." He explained the water came from his own stash, and he hadn't laid a finger on him. Barrick's eyes went wide, completely lost. His brain scrambled to process the reality, wondering why the magic energy hit him so hard. Jan grabbed the kid's hand. "You want answers? I can satisfy that curiosity." He was ready to give a crash course on mana, but the hero added, "I need a favor in return." The orphan looked stunned, caught off guard by the intensity of the deal. With a dangerous glint in his eyes and a smile, the character dropped the condition. "Keep your mouth shut about my golden eyes and my magic." Seeing the glow, Barrick screamed, freaking out, but the hero hissed at him to chill and keep it together. The guy looked ready to throw hands, but Yang cut him off, lecturing him on magic mechanics while dropping a bomb. Barrick's new job was permanent bodyguard duty. That shut the orphan up fast. Yang tapped him, explaining that the buzzing sensation wasn't fear, it was raw power living inside him. Untapped potential, just waiting for a driver. Yang poked a finger right against the guy's chest to make his point. Boom. A blinding light erupted from the contact point, exposing the magical energy and making Barrick's eyes bug out. Staring at his glowing torso and clenching a fist, Barrick stammered, trying to wrap his brain around how this magic stuff actually worked, and where the heck it came from. Yang leaned in curious. Ever heard of mana arts or aura blade techniques? When the kid shook his head no, Yang facepalmed hard, realizing he had to explain the entire universe from scratch. He demanded total focus, and for once, the young man actually locked in, hungry to absorb the secrets. Some people can vibe with their own souls, Yang explained. That resonance, that's what we call magic. He broke it down. Barrick was sitting on a goldmine of potential, but his own instincts were acting like a cork bottling up his energy. That's why normal training failed. Then Yang dropped the truth bomb. Stop fighting it. Barrick blinked, stunned. His own skills were the problem. Yang kept rolling. We need to sync your physical grit with your spiritual energy. Build a bridge between them. Unlock the beast inside. Barrick lunged forward, practically vibrating with hype. You gonna show me the way, boss? But Yang stiff-armed him back. Cool your jets. Read the fine print first. What do I gotta do? The orphan pressed. Yang narrowed his eyes. You sure? You're signing up to be my shadow, my shield, everywhere. Barrick shrugged it off. I got no crib, no fam. I'm free. Yang's expression didn't soften. You could die. The kid just grinned. Deal. They clasped hands, contract sealed in sweat and grit. Grip tight, getting ready to team up. Yang analyzed the guy. Barrick was a wild card, stubborn as a mule, and completely reckless. But that chaos was his superpower. It's what kept him breathing in a fight. Yang flashed back to their first meeting, and knew he picked a winner. He needed a monster, not a knight. Because true strength, it comes from being a freak of nature. Recalling Barrick's savage weapon handling, Yang knew this kid didn't have quit in his vocabulary. He was the type to suffocate an enemy, giving them zero breathing room, pure tenacity on display. That feral look in Barrick's eyes. That's a man who stares down the Reaper and doesn't blink, even when the odds are trash. Freezing in that handshake, Yang realized a warrior with zero fear of death is unstoppable. And that resolve makes him lethal. Slowly, power started flooding back into the orphan's frame. He lit up like a neon sign, strange pulsing energy showing he was leveling up right there. Watching the mana surge, Yang nodded. Barrick wasn't just a street rat anymore. He was swordsman material. Yang crushed his hand in a firm grip, offering more than a job, offering an alliance. The message was clear. Stick with me and we tackle hell together. I got your back. Cut to lunch. Yang could hear the Count yapping from the hallway, stern, demanding the usual. Yang just breezed to the table unbothered. He tuned out his dad's lecture track, letting out a heavy sigh. His brain was already on the next mission, plotting moves. While the old man swirled his wine and ranted, Yang was practically dozing off. Then glint. A ring caught his eye. Since when was Durgi into bling? He'd never pegged the guy for a diamond lover. But that ring, it looked glued to his finger. Suspicion peaked. Yang squinted. A wedding band. No way. He scrapped that theory instantly. The cut was too basic, zero romance. No sparkle, no flex. Staring at the metal, Yang realized this wasn't fashion. It was a tool. Maybe it did something. Then he picked up a frequency, a weird, low hum. Click. He'd heard that exact sound in the Count's office. The old man was wearing it then too. Suspicion meter. Maxed out. What are you hiding? Durgi Yang's mind raced through the possibilities. What dirty laundry was his dad airing? Suddenly, the Count snapped. Hey, quit spacing out. Eat your food. The Countess and Shell just kept their heads down, chewing in silence like good little statues. Then the Count pivoted. So about that new friend of yours, Yang played dumb. Barrick. He tried to gauge if this was a trap. Oh, him, Yang shrugged. Saw him sparring with my brother a while back. Figured he was history after the incident. That got the Countess's attention. Incident. What happened? Jan dropped the bombshell that the orphan had violently lashed out at someone else, leaving the lady completely blindsided and confused. She couldn't wrap her head around it. Why was her adopted son hanging out with a violent brawler? She was absolutely fuming at the thought. But our hero didn't flinch. He made it clear he didn't give a damn about a person's background. Flashing a confident grin, he tuned in as his new mother lectured him about hitting the books. He nodded along, realizing she was spitting facts. Education wasn't just homework. It was the key to survival in this world. Then the Count stepped in, his voice dripping with malice. He laid down a brutal ultimatum: learn to read and write in 3 months, or he'd blame Barrick for the failure. And the punishment: straight-up execution, no mercy. Meanwhile, out by the garden fountain, Milton and his teacher were deep in a hushed conversation. They were strategizing, breaking down the next crucial steps of their master plan. The sister looked at the tutor with pleading eyes, asking if he could really pull this off. The man bowed low, radiating total confidence. He promised he'd crush the assignment and meet the deadline without breaking a sweat. But suddenly the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Feeling eyes burning into him, he spun around instantly. He flinched, suddenly, ambushed by stares from every direction. Strangers, their eyes glued to the piece of paper clutched in his hand. Where did the teacher go? Yang demanded, only to learn he'd been having a cozy chat with the count. The whole thing was seriously sus. Looking like he'd been caught red-handed, the man stammered. We barely exchanged a few words, I swear. But Yang just smirked, felt a lot longer than a few words. He snatched the tutor's hand, pressing the paper into his palm like a brand. The young man leaned in, his voice a low conspiracy. The emperor's power is crumbling in this province, and my father's locked in a cold war he can't win. A wicked smile played on his lips. How do you think Durji would feel, knowing his son's private tutor is having secret meetings with an official from the capital? The teacher's head dropped in defeat. It was just meaningless chatter. Can't you just pretend you saw nothing? He pleaded. The air went dead silent. The man held his breath, waiting for the verdict. Finally, Yang spoke. Sure, that won't be difficult. I can totally look the other way, he said, enjoying the shock on his mentor's face, but it'll cost you. Yang laid out his terms. Tomorrow, in the garden, you will keep my father occupied for exactly 30 minutes. Stunned but trapped, the tutor could only agree. Oh, and we're not done, Yang added, sliding another document across the table. It was a report on the desert. I need a map, he ordered, and all the intel you can find on the late spring climate. With a chilling smile, Yang added, I trust you're a smart man. You get what I'm putting down right, and you'll get it done right. Bowing low, the man assured him, I understand everything. He knew what this kid was scheming. His job wasn't to ask why, it was just to follow the order flawlessly. A pulse of magical energy flared to life, filling the air with a strange radiance, like 1,000 tiny captured fireworks. Holding his fingers up to the light, Yang measured the empty space, trying to perfectly calculate the diameter of Durji's ring. He focused intently, burning the image reflected in the glow into his mind, every angle, every facet of the precious jewelry. He guesstimated the size of the stone, but knew there was a flaw. The proportions were just slightly off. Staring down at a blank canvas of paper, he had no idea how to sketch the ring with the absolute precision he needed. Screw it. Deciding to just go for it, he let his pen fly across the page, channeling the image from his memory. He was lost in the details, meticulously tracing every shape when a voice shattered his focus. Hannah stood in the doorway, calling his name. She'd pulled him from his trance for only a second, but it was long enough. Yang had finished his work. Her gaze drifted to the drawing. She saw the perfect illustration of a ring with notes scrawled in the margins. Leaning closer, her jaw dropped. No way! That's the Count's ring, she breathed, stunned by the insane accuracy. Spot on, Yang confirmed, a flicker of pride in his eyes. My old man never takes it off. I don't even like diamonds, he admitted, but this one always caught my eye. He looked at the maid, genuinely impressed. You have a killer eye for detail. He was amazed by her powers of observation, her knack for seeing the little things that everyone else just glanced over. Still, it was weird. Why would Durgi forge a key from a diamond? It seemed like dramatic overkill. A diamond ring is a key, and then it hit him like a ton of bricks. Diamonds don't conduct electricity. That single fact unlocked a whole new theory. His mind flashed to the secret drawer built into his father's massive office desk. It had to be protected by an electrical trap. And this ring, this non-conductive gem, was the perfect lockpick to bypass it. A victorious smile spread across his face. Hannah, you're a lifesaver. I've got it. He leaned in. I need you to find a carpenter who can craft a replica of this ring but with a rubber coating. The next day, the tutor arrived at the Count's study to execute Yang's plan, steeling himself to distract the formidable man. This was the diversion his son needed to get inside the office. I believe this conversation will take quite some time, he said with a practiced smile. Thank you for making time for me, Count. There are vital matters to discuss. He turned, leaving the office and beckoning for the Count to follow. The man followed him down the hallway, strangely obedient and without a single question. But then he paused. Why did you wish to speak, and where are we going? Just out of sight, tucked in an alcove, Yang held his breath and watched. This was it. The plan was in motion. He was in control, a silent puppet master pulling the strings. The two men walked toward the mansion's exit in a heavy silence, the air thick with unspoken tension. Hannah materialized at his side. The fake ring, he whispered. It's time to imitate the key. Unfolding a piece of white cloth, the girl revealed the jewelry and placed it carefully into Yang's hand. It was a perfect copy, an exquisite forgery with every detail painstakingly executed. Yang inspected it. The dimensions were a flawless match to the original, and the thin rubber coating would guarantee its success. Excellent work, he told her, pressing a heavy stack of coins into her hand. Hopefully this is enough to keep your family eating well. She was absolutely beaming. Before he left, he tasked her with lookout duty, and the servant, overwhelmed with gratitude, immediately agreed. She knew this was a high-stakes mission, and that she had to remain on high alert. Turning back, Jan sized up Barrick. You ready to handle your part, he asked, trying to feel out if the kid truly understood the immense weight of the responsibility he was being given. The boy wavered, asking, "Why do I have to do something like this?" His voice laced with fear about what could go wrong. Clasping the boy's hand, our hero laid it out for him. "You cannot let a single soul into that office, period." The gravity of the situation was undeniable. With a fire in his eyes, the orphan shot back, "I can handle it." His voice was full of newfound conviction, ready to execute his mission, no matter the obstacles. Jan leaned in, his tone serious. "Barak, your role in this is absolutely critical. If you fail, this entire plan will go up in smoke." Slipping into the office, he moved toward the desk where an odd bowl filled with some substance caught his eye, immediately raising questions about what it could possibly be for. His fingers explored the desk's surface, searching for the mechanism. He finally located the hidden slot and slid the duplicate ring into place, his movements careful and controlled. With one fluid motion, the desk drawer clicked open, a testament to his smooth and practiced skill, a display of precision that made the difficult task look effortless. As the hidden compartment was revealed, our hero froze for a beat, completely stunned by how simple the mechanism was and how easily he'd bypassed its security. The young man felt a rush of relief. This was turning out to be way easier than he had anticipated, realizing this mission wouldn't be as tough as he thought. Glancing at the papers inside the box, he recognized them as letters from the clan of otherworldly warriors, but their meaning was lost on him since he barely knew their language. He grabbed a blank sheet of paper, deciding to copy the letter verbatim so he could decode its secrets later, focusing on every stroke, knowing it was the only way to fully grasp the information. For a split second, he had a brilliant idea. Adding a date and a seal would make the forgery look completely authentic, like an official document. Committing to his gambit, Jan snatched the Count's stamp from the desk and set his plan into motion, not wasting a thought on the potential fallout. The Treasury was guaranteed to cross-check this report with the Count's tax filings, which would only add to its credibility and completely sell the lie to the auditors. Once it was done, he started folding the documents, knowing he had to put everything back precisely as he'd found it, so his father wouldn't suspect a thing. All of a sudden, a voice outside the door asked if the Count was in, and his blood ran cold. He was about to be caught. In the next instant, a servant pushed the door open, and his jaw dropped when he saw Jan holding the papers, completely baffled by what the young man was doing. Realizing he was totally busted, our hero decided to use his magic to obscure his actions and temporarily wipe the servant's short-term memory. In a flash, the room was bathed in a strange light and pulsing energy, and the secretary's mind began to draw a blank. When the Count returned to his study, he discovered the servant lying unconscious on the floor and just assumed the man had finally cracked, completely oblivious to what had really happened. Standing near the desk, the butler was just as confused about what was wrong with his colleague, while Durgi was radiating pure fury, already calculating his next move. Slamming his fist on the table, he suddenly barked the order to get rid of the servant. The other man flinched completely, blindsided by the harsh command. Durgi then roared for the servant to be removed and for all of his possessions to be seized, as the rest of the staff stood frozen in shock. Far from the chaos, the maid and the boy bolted from the estate and fled, desperate to escape the Count's wrath and save their own skins. A little while later, Barak, while munching on an apple, asked, "So how did that whole showdown between the servants and the Count end?" Clearly curious about the outcome. Jan replied with a smirk, "Things got a little dicey, but it's all handled now." The orphan was furious. "Handled? I almost died. Thanks to your crazy plan." The young man's curiosity then piqued. So did Durgi find out that his assistant was the one who went through his office? Jan, busy examining the papers, just shrugged. What difference does it make? He remembered the moment the assistant had caught him red-handed with the documents, and it suddenly clicked. His father must believe that the assistant was the one who had rifled through the Count's office to carry out his order. The teacher sketched out a map and added a weather forecast, marking key points and potential dangers they might face on the road. To get Jan ready, he also warned the young man to be cautious, explaining there was a serious risk of sandstorms that could derail the entire journey. He also passed him a note, leaving our hero racking his brain, wondering who on earth could possibly be his successor, and how it would totally rewrite the future. Staring at the documents, he just couldn't grasp why they were so critical they had to be locked away in a safe. He mulled over the insane level of security these papers demanded, then noticed one was addressed to a specific person. His mind started racing, something about an otherworldly clan of warriors, and he began trying to predict his father's next move. All of a sudden, Barak slid up next to him, proudly announcing he'd figured out that the black squiggles on the white paper were in fact words. Our hero gave him a playful finger wag, acknowledging the guard's brilliant deduction. The young man told the orphan to quit spewing nonsense and asked if he remembered his instructions. The orphan snapped a nod in reply. Standing ramrod straight with a salute, he rattled off the mission, tossed the key hand, the documents to Moline, and on the return trip, shoot a message to Felia. Barak enthusiastically added that he needed to tell Jan's mother to bounce, go into hiding, and gather guli seeds, showing he had the whole plan on lock. Jan was impressed that the servant had remembered every detail and gave him a nod of approval, but the kid just laughed it off, saying it was all super simple. No sweat. Glancing out the window, Jan's eyes locked onto a pitifully thin horse in the courtyard, and a servant dressed in some seriously bizarre robes. His curiosity was immediately sparked, forcing him to watch how this would unfold. With a sly smirk, he asked Barrack which exit he was ordered to use today, and the boy replied, "The main gate." Seeing a crowd of people and horses already forming, he told the guard to switch plans and use the back entrance to dodge any unwanted drama. Standing among the crowd was a mysterious guy with a literal eagle perched on his arm, his intense gaze sweeping over everyone. As he scanned the courtyard, his eyes found Jan in the window, and he froze, staring up at the young man with wide, unblinking eyes. Jan met his stare with a cool, knowing smile. Not a word was exchanged. "Yeah, it's gonna be noisy at the gate today," he told Barrack. "We're better off taking a different path." That evening, inside his father's heavily guarded office, he came face to face with a stranger on a high-stakes mission. The man introduced himself as a messenger from the clan, a representative of the earthly warriors. The name was Balam Sin Nurserin, a title that immediately commanded Jan's respect and intrigue. With a smooth smile, our hero offered his own name in return, and said it was a genuine honor to meet such a crucial envoy and hear him out. But the pleasantries were cut short. The Count jumped in, demanding to know what urgent business brought the young man here, trying to get a read on the situation's gravity. Balam reported that their deputy head was in critical condition, his life hanging by a thread. The guest announced his purpose. He wanted to negotiate a peace treaty with their clan. He solemnly added that this matter required immediate preparation for what was to come, urging them to understand the weight of this meeting. In his clan, the death of a deputy chief was a far greater blow than the death of the chief himself. The deputy was their spiritual guide. He was a symbol for the entire community, revered like a holy mentor. If he were to die, the clan would enter a full year of mourning, paralyzed by rituals and tradition. So, before that catastrophe could strike, they aimed to secure peace with the Brack County to prevent chaos and protect their people. The Count looked perplexed, acknowledging the grim situation, but then asked why he should be entertaining Balam's proposal, questioning the entire basis for a peace agreement. In a dead calm tone, the young man explained that the deputy chief was the pillar of their community, a mentor whose judgment shaped every decision and every action. From ancient times, he had been their compass, pointing them toward the righteous path and earning unparalleled respect. To be accepted, one had to face him, look him in the eye, and earn his blessing. Then came the bombshell. Balam declared that John had to see him to meet his gaze and prove the sincerity of his intentions. The Count erupted in fury, shouting that they were daring to question his own bloodline, reminding them he'd promised to send documents, stamped with the Emperor's own decree. But Balam just shot him down. "We never received them." Unfazed, Durgi tried to explain that John was the son of his second wife, and that not just anyone could get an imperial decree issued on a whim. The guest asked with a hint of disdain, "Do you honestly believe that paper is proof?" He locked his eyes on the young man, his contempt clear. Only the righteous gaze of the deputy can truly verify a man's lineage and the truth of his family. While the Count was absolutely raging, and Jan sat there cool as a cucumber, Balam finally saw their game, but he couldn't figure out the endgame. Why forge the boy's name into the family registry? What was the ultimate goal? Meanwhile, our hero's mind was already playing 4D chess. What happens to this whole peace deal if the deputy bites the dust right now? He even considered the possibility of just creating a new, more convenient registry. Glancing over at the Count, the young man tried to decipher what his father was plotting in that very moment, attempting to anticipate his every reaction. With a strained smile, Durgi wrapped an arm around him, saying, "Oh, the situation is perfectly clear to me." A firm squeeze on the shoulder signaled he understood the stakes and was primed for whatever came next. The Count's voice was low, warning the young man to brace himself for the coming storm, but insisted they table the discussion for the morning. Glancing at his son with a thin smile, he assured him the butler would lead him to his chambers, guaranteeing absolute privacy and security. Balami nodded smoothly, thanking the Duke for his hospitality and signaling his intent to play ball. He was about to turn away when the guest's voice cut in. "I expect a fair judgment from Durgi on the Emperor's behalf." The weight of those words hung in the air. As he climbed into the carriage, the Count was fuming. The sheer audacity of Balami showing up unannounced to dump his problems on their doorstep was infuriating, and since the kid was the clan chief's brother, he'd be watched like a hawk. He ordered the necessary documents prepared, and instructed Jan to arrange a reception fit for royalty. Bowing his head in deference, our hero simply replied, "It will be done." Perfect obedience, exactly as his father demanded. The massive gates groaned open, and the carriage, pulled by powerful horses carrying the Duke, shot forward, its wheels thundering against the stone pavement. Bathed in the pale moonlight, the young man realized his father was moving with incredible speed, scrambling to get the papers ready with a fierce, unsettling determination. An eerie silence settled over the courtyard, and our hero finally let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. The old man was gone. Now he could speak to their representative alone. Laying out a lavish spread of food, he flashed a smile and urged Balami to eat, pointing out he must be drained from the long journey and deserved to refuel. The servants practically drooled at the feast as Yan announced, "There is one thing I must ask." The representative's gaze sharpened, all his attention focused. "I require an escort to the clan," Deputy Yan stated plainly, underlining the need for security. The guest countered that Yan himself was the promised escort, and that anyone else would be nothing but dead weight. The request seemed so trivial, met with a smirk and a look of confusion. As our hero asked again, "Dead weight," trying to decipher the meaning behind Balamy's sharp words. Abruptly, a figure emerged from behind him. It was Barak, a pack slung over his shoulder, announcing he was there to help, and ready to follow any command. The moment the orphan spoke, Balamy's composure shattered. He burst into a booming laugh, so loud it shocked the entire room into silence. Looking directly at Yan, he chuckled, "You certainly know how to pick them." Yan's expression hardened. "Why is that so amusing to you?" The laughter vanished in an instant. Balamy's tone turned ice cold as he spat. "You're spouting absolute garbage, and frankly, you're far too cocky." Out of nowhere, he declared that Yan was no different from one of their own warriors. A comparison so bizarre it left everyone baffled. Leaning in with a piercing stare, he demanded, "Are you genuinely suggesting I take two men who couldn't survive a day in the desert without water?" In a steady voice. The young man countered that while his partner wasn't a genius, he was incredibly strong, and extra muscle is never a bad thing, promising that they wouldn't have to worry about a thing. After a tense stare-down, Balamy finally relented, promising to consider the proposal, but only if they met one single condition. A sly smirk crept across his face as he laid out his terms. He would only agree if Barak could defeat one of his own people in a fight, proving his strength. As darkness fell, they all gathered in a moonlit clearing near the estate, the stage set for a duel that would seal their fate. Stepping forward, a girl named Sue cracked her neck. "Sucks to be the younger one," she sighed, before generously offering her opponent a 5-minute head start, shooting her a look of utter contempt. Barak turned to Yan. "You're kidding, right? I have to fight this little girl instead of a real opponent." While his challenger warmed up with effortless grace, the young man grumbled, wondering why none of the other guests had bothered to witness such a pivotal showdown. At the same time, our hero warned the orphan, "Get careless, and you'll live to regret this loss." In his gut, he knew exactly why no one had shown up. The power gap between the two fighters was astronomical. To Balamy's crew, Sue's victory was a foregone conclusion. Suddenly, Barak's eyes darted to a single glowing window in the mansion, and he shouted in outrage. His focus completely shattered. Yan explained grimly, "That is the god of death, Nurserin. His presence here is a dark omen," a revelation that visibly stunned the orphan. Hearing this, the boy's shock morphed into pure rage as he roared, "No one gets to underestimate me," but Yan grabbed him, trying to bring him back to his senses. The preparation time was ticking away, and our hero locked eyes with him. "All you have to do is crush your opponent, and show them you have what it takes to back me up." He decided to tap into his magic, his palm igniting with a gentle glow that seemed to pour strength right into him. The light even danced in his eyes as he seemingly hypnotized his friend, flooding his mind with visions of victory. Gripping the orphan's hand, Yang urged him to listen close, promising to spill the secret to winning it all. Barak, totally bewildered, just stood there, shook, but didn't dare let go of his master's hand, who promised him, "I know exactly how you can win this." Just then, clouds swallowed part of the moon, and Sue's voice cut through the air sharp and confident. "You ready to throw down? Or what?" She grabbed the timer, flicking it to 5 minutes, a handicap she'd already promised him. With a smirk, she laid out the deal if Barak could somehow drop her in that time. The win was his. But if not, he was in for a world of humiliation. Tying his hair back, the kid shot back with pure swagger, claiming that much time was overkill for a clean and epic win. Pulling out a hair tie, he added with a sneer, "Just try not to cry when you lose, okay?" In a chilling tone, the orphan promised his opponent she was about to feel some serious pain and would regret ever accepting this fight. Like a flash of lightning, he blasted forward, kicking up a storm of dust and closing the gap in an instant. With massive ground-eating strides, Barak charged his target, who just stood there completely unbothered. The second he was in range, he cocked back his fist, ready to absolutely flatten this overconfident girl with one hit. Popping up on her toes, Sue taunted, "You're the one who's going to be crying," and then vanished from the spot, effortlessly sidestepping the blow. The kid was floored, watching his fist punch nothing but air. He couldn't process what just happened. His calculations had been perfect. Her agility was insane. Using her small frame, the girl weaved around his attack and literally spun around him. He couldn't believe his master plan was already useless. He was so sure of his own speed. Zipping around nimbly, Sue closed in for a counter, and the dude had no idea she could move that fast. Pissed off, he started throwing wild punches in every direction, but his opponent gracefully dodged every single one. The realization that this girl was also a speed demon hit him like a truck, leaving him completely stunned. She flickered in and out of his vision, first on one side then the other, basically toying with him and flexing her dominance. Suddenly, Sue planted her palms on the grass, bracing for a move. Every muscle in her body coiled tight as she held her breath. Launching off her hands, she flipped through the air and slammed her foot square into Barrick's face, sending him stumbling backward. Grinding his teeth, he let out a yell of pure pain and rage, barely twisting out of the way of another kick aimed right for his jaw. Totally wrecked, the guy staggered back a few steps, trying to get his breath and pull himself together. Blood was pouring from his nose, and he desperately swiped at it with his hand, trying to stay in the fight without losing his cool. Sue just laughed. "How exactly are you planning on beating me with moves that sloppy?" she taunted. Confused, she wondered out loud how he expected to last 5 minutes when he could barely even stand. With a grin, Barrick shot back that he had zero intention of suffering, and that he had more than enough time to snag that sweet, sweet victory. In the dead silent clearing, a brutal battle was unfolding, one that Yang watched from the sidelines, his face a total blank slate. He could see his boy was getting absolutely wrecked, just as he'd expected, his stamina draining with every second. Meanwhile, Sue kept up the relentless assault, and the orphan could barely even defend himself, ducking and backing away. The beatdown continued. The girl was clearly dominating, while the boy was just trying to survive to not get knocked out too fast under the barrage. He kept staring into her eyes, unable to wrap his head around how a body so small could pack so much insane power. A smile played on Sue's lips. She was vibing with this fight, feeling her own power, and already tasting the win over this dude who just wouldn't quit. Reeling back, she aimed a vicious knee strike, loading up a final crushing blow to end her enemy. Seeing that Barrick's defeat was about to happen, Yang decided it was time for a little magical assist to flip the script. His lips barely moved as he shot a mental command straight into the orphan's mind, "Fight to the end," and their intense eyes locked. The next time Sue launched her leg forward, Barrick caught it, unleashing his real strength for the very first time. His opponent was completely shocked. The girl cried out a mix of pain and total disbelief, not expecting this weakling to suddenly find a backbone and fight back. While she was still reeling, the boy announced, "My turn." His voice boomed across the clearing, shattering the night's calm. A flurry of blackbirds exploded from the trees at the noise. Under the brilliant full moon, the girl screamed, yelling at Barrick to let her go that instant, but he just tightened his grip. She thrashed, trying to break free. But the orphan, his eyes burning with intensity, just said he was following Yang's orders and held on for dear life. He roared that he'd come dangerously close to ending her, and the sheer force of his rage sent a chill down the spine of the hero, watching from the sidelines. Her face burning red and tears threatening to spill, Sue spat a curse, the agony and shame of her first ever defeat hitting her like a physical blow. Facing her, the protagonist instantly understood that Nurserin had sent the young woman as a strategic pawn to prevent a full-blown bloodbath. He commanded her to go report his bodyguard's victory. A smirk touched his lips as he added that the bruises actually looked good on her, lending her an exotic air. It was like she wore a completely new face. Collapsed on the grass, she felt the crushing realization that her luck had finally brutally run out. The loss was an absolute stain on her honor. Nearby, Yang observed as the orphan kept his rival pinned, refusing to relent. The girl thrashed wildly, desperate to break his grip. That's when the hero felt a strange electric energy spike up behind him. He ordered his partner to let her go. The window continued to cast its eerie glow as Bellamy tracked every single movement, his focus unbreakable. He wasn't just evaluating the combat, he was dissecting the entire dynamic between the two partners. When their eyes met, Yang felt a jolt of satisfaction. He'd won the bet, but he knew deep down that the tense negotiations with the representative were far from over. The guest's eyes fell on Sue's battered face, and his expression hardened into pure fury. He had walked in expecting a simple sparring match, but this whole scene reeked of mockery, a deliberate and calculated insult. Sitting opposite him, our hero offered an apology for his bodyguard's conduct, while the girl seethed silently just a few feet away. She was practically radiating with raw irritation. Bellamy's voice dropped, becoming deadly serious as he asked if the young man was actively trying to make a fool of him. Fighting to control his own temper and utterly bewildered, Yang shot back. "What exactly was my fault in this?" The ambassador pushed, ignoring his defense. "You weren't in the ring, but look at Sue's swollen crimson face. Then maybe you'll understand the gravity of this offense." Nurserin, now annoyed, cut in. "What do you think would have happened to her? If Barrick had unleashed his full power, the result would have been catastrophic." Throughout it all, the young man simply held a silent, unreadable smile. The guest drilled into him with a gaze so cold and sharp it felt like it could pierce straight through to his soul. He saw an orphan standing before him. But then Bellamy's stern face cracked, and he erupted into booming laughter, as if the entire confrontation had been one elaborate test. For him, this was just some unexpected entertainment. As if conceding defeat, he acknowledged that the young count possessed a spirit worthy of true respect. With no more ceremony, he declared him the victor. His eyes then shifted to the orphan standing behind Yang, and the ambassador announced they were taking him along too. Their journey would take them together across the great desert. Bowing his head deeply, our hero expressed his gratitude to the guest. He was thankful for the permission to bring his partner, sincerely appreciating the faith his new allies were placing in him. Across the way, Sue exploded in anger, screaming at Barrick to get her something for her face. "Fix this now or I'll make your life a living nightmare," but he just laughed her off. The next day, the Count and his guest met formally. He declared that he had accepted the man's terms and was prepared to finalize the truce and begin their new alliance. With a low bow, Bellamy thanked Yang for his foresight and cooperation, offering his gratitude on behalf of his entire clan, and even his ancestors. As they shook hands, the man asked that a message of deep respect and solidarity be sent to the chief. With that, they parted ways, their mutual trust now solidified. 1 week later, in his room, Yang was saying goodbye to Hannah. They embraced tightly, and the girl begged him to return home safely. She cried into his shoulder, promising that Alan would cook him a feast if he just came back, but her words seemed to crush his spirit instead of lifting it. His entire demeanor shifted. He became grave and told her to listen to him with her full attention, because his next words would forever alter her destiny. Leaning close, the young man breathed a startling command into the maid's ear. She was to leave the estate while he was away. The girl was completely stunned. A look of terror crossed her face as she asked why on earth she would do that. But the hero, offering no clear reason, simply said that this act would be her salvation in the future. Gripping her shoulders, he thanked her for every single thing she had ever done for him. Hannah tried to protest, but the words died in her throat. She saw in his eyes that his decision was final. At the estate, our hero was ready to depart, refusing to delay a moment longer. The sun blazed brightly in the sky. He strode confidently toward the exit, brushing past the servants' protests, his determination, an unstoppable force. Eagles soared high in the endless blue sky. Their immense wings beat the air like a celestial escort for the caravan, signaling the dawn of a new era. Meanwhile, Bellamy, his forces, and Yang journeyed deep into the great desert. They were marching directly into the heartland of the warrior clan. A massive yellow palace erupted from the sands, a beacon where the ambassador and his entourage had been long awaited. Preparations for their audience were in full swing. Seated upon his throne, Chief Cockateener greeted the newcomer. He announced his readiness to hear the man's proposition and discuss the critical terms. Raising a hand and bowing, the Count introduced himself. He presented himself as the voice of his family, while our hero stood by, silently absorbing every detail of the tense atmosphere. Eager to dispense with formalities, the commander immediately suggested they get down to business and sign the truce agreement to cement their new alliance. Durji pored over the document, his focus absolute. He was terrified of overlooking a crucial detail, knowing that a single mistake could cost him everything, their trust and their respect. He pulls out a vial, declaring it's a blood kinship potion, the one thing that can prove Yang is his true son. First, our hero pricks his finger. The Count does the same, and their crimson drops bleed into the vial, swirling together. Once the ritual is done, the vial erupts in a brilliant blue light, locking in the blood connection with the power of ancient magic. Just then, Bellamy leans in close to Kakanir, whispering something directly into his ear. But the chief's face is a stone mask, giving nothing away. Finally, he speaks. They need the judgment of the first advisor, Vincent. He needs Vincent's official confirmation before they can finalize the procedure. The Baron plays it cool and agrees, but inside he's seething, wondering why they trust a shaman over a literal magic potion. Grabbing a knife, the clan chief slices his own palm, letting his blood drip onto the document as the guests watch, frozen with shock and tension. Totally confused, Yang and Durji can only stare as blood splatters across the pack's pages like some kind of brutal warrior ritual. With his bloody finger, Kakanir presses his signature onto the agreement, sealing their new alliance with his own authority and power. Clasping his guest's hand, he declares that from this second forward, their agreement is law. The Baron sings the praises of Brack and his clan of otherworldly warriors, as a horse-drawn carriage waits for him at the palace entrance. The sun beats down with zero mercy as guards lead him to the edge of the vast, sandy desert. Before he goes, the Count pulls Yang into a hug. He tells him to take care of himself, showing a sliver of concern so rare it was almost shocking. But then Durgi's voice drops to a menacing whisper in his ear, reminding the young man of the one and only reason he's still breathing. Putting on a brave face, the young man reassures his father that he remembers everything and is only acting for the honor of House Brack. It's not like he has any other option. As the carriage vanishes into the shimmering sands, he and Barrack just watch it disappear. The sun is a relentless force against their faces, and the heat quickly becomes an unbearable torment. The very air seems to ripple from the heat, making every single step through the desert feel heavier and more agonizing than the last. As our hero and Kakanir get ready for the journey, the orphan starts complaining relentlessly about thirst, constantly downing water. Unfurling a map, Yang points out Vincent's location to his crew, the spot they're supposed to reach within a few days. After some time, they finally approach the gates of the clan advisor's castle, a tranquil oasis of towering palm trees. The people immediately bow, shake hands, and explode with joy at the sight of their leader. Meanwhile, the young man and his bodyguard, still in disguise, hang back on their horses, trying their best to blend in. Sweat is just pouring down their bodies as whispers snake through the crowd, everyone trying to guess which one is the Count's son. They're all making their own assumptions. A look of worry flashes across the chieftain's face as he leaps from his horse. He asks a servant how the first advisor is doing, and gets the reply that she is feeling much better now. Spinning around, Kakanir locks eyes with the young man and calls him forward with a piercing gaze and a voice that demands obedience. Projecting pure calm, our hero dismounts and follows his guide, fighting to keep his expression confident and his mind sharp. A few minutes later, they stand before a set of massive wooden doors leading into the clan deputy's personal chambers. Stepping inside, he sees an old woman lying on a bed. The chief walks right up to her, while Yang stays back respectfully by the door. As Kakanir explains why they've come, Yang keeps his head bowed low, waiting like an obedient servant for what comes next. Gently taking her hand, the chief helps Vincent sit up, a gesture brimming with respect for her wisdom and her role in the clan. Once she's sitting, she leans in and whispers something in his ear, in their native tongue. He nods carefully, absorbing her every word. He turns to their guest, explaining that the woman finds it hard to speak, so she will answer in her own language, and he will act as the translator. The old woman's gaze bores into Yang, as she states that she must first test if he is truly worthy. She commands him to approach the bed. With slow, steady steps, our hero walks toward the advisor. He prepares himself for the words that will define his fate, but then she snatches his hand in an iron death grip. It's a shocking strength that doesn't match her frail, aged body. Her eyes ignite with a brilliant light as she asks if the hero is truly a Brack, or if his ancestors are someone else entirely. As she looks at Yang, she sees a vision of the Emperor, as he was in the past, and as he is destined to become. While his hands are still captured by the seers, he confidently confirms he is the descendant of Count Durgi. She looks surprised, noting that his presence seems to signal a time of peace, and he insists that being a Brack is his only destiny. A heavy silence falls over the room, but Vincent keeps holding his hand as if refusing to let him go. They stare at each other, not a word passing between them. At last, she releases his hand but remains utterly silent. The silence she leaves behind is suffocating, weighing down on everyone in the room as they see how weak the deputy has become. Kakanir announced their departure, telling her to rest up and get her health back. Barrick and his attendant were already posted up by the exit waiting. The second they spotted Yang emerging with the chief, both of them whipped their heads around, completely stunned. The captain strode forward with a powerful purpose, while the young man scrambled to keep pace behind him. His mind was a million miles away from the chaos unfolding around him, when out of nowhere, the man gave a shocking order, placed the young man and his bodyguard within his own clan. As a show of immense respect and trust, he pivoted and announced to everyone that a welcome celebration would be thrown that very night. He demanded they be there on time, making it crystal clear that excuses would not be tolerated. Without uttering another word, the chief silently stalked off to handle his business, leaving our bewildered hero just watching him go. Barrick immediately darted over, shouting with uncontainable excitement, "Bro, what did he tell you?" His curiosity was practically vibrating off him. The young man just recounted Kakanir's words with a detached air, but the orphan was absolutely ecstatic when he heard the news. Everything had unfolded even better than he could have possibly hoped. That evening, just as promised, a massive feast was underway. Some feasted, others celebrated, and the entire hall was buzzing with laughter and music, creating an absolutely electric atmosphere. At the designated time, Yang and Barrick strolled in their cheeks packed with food, only to be called out, which made them jump in surprise. They instantly spun around. It was the chief who asked with a grin if they'd had a chance to recover their strength. Right next to him stood Sue, who already looked like she was back to 100%. The guests respectfully thanked Kakanir for his hospitality, and in a massive show of favor, he gestured for them to sit right beside him. The chief remarked that the map of the Great Desert the young man provided had been a total game changer and asked if they could hold on to it permanently. Turning back, Yang confirmed they could absolutely use it without question, since that was the entire reason he'd made it. Firing up a cigar, the man concluded that Count Brack had somehow managed to raise at least one worthy son, showing some respect for the family. But our hero's focus was immediately snagged by the roll Kakanir was smoking, and his internal alarm started screaming. As he struggled to identify it, his mind raced for a moment, before the horrifying realization crashed down on him. It was a cigar rolled with Garuda leaves. He was completely shocked because that stuff was highly illegal. Staring at it, he remembered the substance was used as a potent stimulant. Its effect on common soldiers was particularly devastating. He recalled how Durgi had deviously schemed to get his hands on this exact plant, risking everything for profit without a single thought about the consequences. Bit by bit, the young man sank into the depths of his past, his thoughts drifting to his mother's parcel. A familiar ache stabbed at his heart, the longing weighing heavier than ever. Then, remembering the strange note tucked into the bag of gold, he was baffled by how his illiterate mother could have possibly written to him. In the letter, she had asked him to bring those specific leaves, and the request struck the hero as incredibly bizarre since his mother never smoked. Soon, the sickening truth dawned on him. This was his father's secret plot. He wanted Yang to get his hands on the forbidden goods, and if he were captured, he would throw the woman under the bus. Suddenly, Kakanir's voice sliced through his thoughts, yanking him violently back to reality and shattering the memory. The young man snapped his head up to face the chief, desperately trying to mask the turmoil inside him. Locking eyes with him, the chieftain spoke with a cold fury. The boy shouldn't even dare to look at the Garuda leaves because this tobacco was reserved exclusively for warriors. He added that he understood the boy's curiosity, but he would absolutely not permit any interest in the matter, or any questions about it anywhere else. With a thin smile, our hero replied that he understood perfectly. He made a mental note of the leader's sharp insight. The man didn't miss a single tiny detail. Mulling it over, he figured that if he played up this whole smuggling situation correctly, he could completely sabotage the reconciliation with his brothers. He abruptly noticed the piercing gaze of one of Kakanir's servants, and was instantly on edge, wondering why the man was staring him down like that. Filled with curiosity, Yang asked Sue, who was standing behind him, about the man, hoping she could give him even a sliver of information on this strange person. She explained that he was Boomer, the chief's stepmother's cousin, and that he was in charge of the clan's entire food supply. Holding such a critical position, the hero grew tense, wondering why on earth the man wouldn't break his gaze. His anxiety spiked with every passing minute. Meanwhile, a servant hurried over to the chief and called out to him. Trying not to draw any unwanted attention or kill the festive vibe, he leaned in and whispered something directly into his ear. The change in Kakanir's expression was immediate, his stern face now reflecting a deep sense of alarm. He shot up from his seat abruptly. He silently trailed the servant toward the exit, without offering any explanation to his guests, but no one else seemed to notice. Watching them go, the hero immediately concluded that the chief had bolted because of Vincent's attack. His stomach plummeted with worry for the woman. Sue then leaned in and clarified that it was the doctor. Because they had no idea when the old woman might finally pass away, the young man asked with genuine concern if there was truly no way to cure her. The question caught her completely off guard. Talk about being forward. She sat down beside him, her voice low. There might be one way, she admitted, but it's a long shot. We would need a silas flower. She added a critical detail: the plant is immortal. It never wilts. And that's when it hit him, his eyes flying wide open. His mind flashed to the red lily, sitting in a pot back in his room. It all clicked into place. That was the exact flower she was talking about. The sheer coincidence was staggering. This flower wasn't just a plant. It was his one shot at pulling Vincent back from the brink of death. Night bled into day as the sun clawed its way over the sandy horizon, setting the sky ablaze with color. While the clan prepared for the day ahead, a city of legendary warriors remained hidden deep within the dunes. In this town, shrouded in myth and mystery, the first advisor had been unconscious since the night before. The doctor and the chief kept a grim vigil by her side, the air thick with tension. The clan was desperate for the silas flower, but a dark memory lingered. The last expedition sent to find it never returned. Kakanir was at a dead end. Spotting the outsiders in the hut, the leader's voice was sharp with anger. Why did you bring Yan here, Nurserin? He's completely useless to us. Alongside, Balamyan stood quietly near the entrance, a silent observer to the brewing storm. You could cut the atmosphere with a knife. Then the advisor dropped a bombshell. He knows where to find the silas flower. The statement silenced the entire room. Every single head swiveled towards the young man, their stares drilling into him, demanding answers. The pressure in the room became immense. The clan elders weren't buying it, whispering amongst themselves that the flower was nothing more than a childish fairy tale. Kakanir sneered, his eyes flashing with a mix of fury and doubt. You really know where this thing is? He shot up from his seat, slamming a fist on the table that echoed through the hut. You will not meddle in the private affairs of this clan. Seething, he jabbed a finger toward the exit. Get back to your quarters. Now. Not another word. But Jan held his ground, his voice steady as he spoke of a plant that could not die, hoping his words would pierce the chief's rage. The chief's interest was suddenly piqued. This flower, he asked, his tone shifting, is it red? Kakanir froze, the anger on his face, giving way to uncertainty. Have you truly seen such a plant? He whispered, his voice trembling, torn between a lifetime of disbelief and a desperate surge of hope. After a beat, Jan played his card. I believe I saw one at my father's estate. But he continued, before I tell you anything, I have a condition. He let that hang in the air. First, understand that Brack County is under the banner of the Burial Empire. The Emperor himself is aware of the peace pact between you and my father. Jan's tone turned to steel as he demanded their protection and respect, not as a mere visitor, but as an official representative of the Empire. A slow, predatory smile spread across Kakanir's face as he stalked forward, his gaze chilling. He got right up in Yan's face, his voice a low growl. Allow me to ask you just one little question. Then his hand shot out, wrapping around Jan's throat. If I were to kill you right now, he whispered calmly, would the Empire really send an army for you? Fighting against the crushing grip, the young man managed to speak. I can't say if they'd send troops, he choked out, but I can guarantee that my death will bring you nothing but trouble. He locked eyes with the chieftain. The very soul of the imperial palace is passed down from one generation to the next, and right now it resides within me. The leader scoffed in his face. Don't make me laugh. That's the most arrogant, ridiculous thing I've ever heard. He was convinced it was because of outsiders like Jan that God had sent Madame Vincent to them. He grabbed the boy and hauled him toward her tent through a curtain of swaying beads. Seeing the chief dragging the boy inside, the old woman struggled to rise from her bed, her frail body held up by the doctor. Still, clutching Yan's arm, the chief frantically explained the entire situation to his deputy. "Is it true?" he demanded, his voice laced with anxiety as he searched her face for an answer. She remained on the bed, looking at him with an unnerving silence. Her gaze was ancient, holding a sense of deep mystery and untapped power. Suddenly, an otherworldly light ignited in her eyes. The very air in the room felt electric, putting everyone on edge. A strange, guttural sound escaped her throat as she raised a trembling hand, pointing a single withered finger directly at the young man, a silent confirmation. The doctor lunged to catch her as the effort nearly made her collapse, while Kakanir just stared completely lost. Watching this raw display of magic in stunned silence, the woman slumped back onto the bed. The chief, still gripping Yan's hand, stood frozen in shock. A brilliant aura flared to life above our hero's head, but his attention snapped to Madame Vincent's condition. He turned to her with alarm. In response, the old woman was seized by a violent coughing fit, utterly and completely spent. With each gasp more ragged than the last, she violently collapsed back onto the bed. The chilling certainty of her death flashed through the leader's mind, and in a heartbeat everyone surged toward her. But Vincent was terrifyingly still showing no trace of life, and the air in the room grew thick with dread. Catching the heavy shift in atmosphere, the boy announced that the plan was in motion and reported that Silas was already in his room. The chief instantly barked an order to find Jan and retrieve the flower, praying it held the power to save their seer. Frozen at the exit, Barrick's voice trembled with a cocktail of adrenaline and fear. "Why is everyone so on edge? What's the play here?" Flashing a disarming smile, the hero calmly replied, "Everything's under control," trying to mask the storm of anxiety churning inside him. His thoughts drifted to the Crimson Lily. This would be his first true offering to the clan. As a guest of the Burial Empire, he later found himself across the table from Balam and Kakansier, a map spread between them next to the exotic plant. The chief bowed low, expressing his deepest gratitude for the save, admitting that without the young man, their advisor would have been lost. But the hero's face remained grave. "From what I've heard," he stated, "this won't be enough. To brew the actual medicine, they would require several more of its roots." Not wanting to downplay the incredible save, the man stressed, "You still came through for us, but can you get your hands on more sillies?" After a calculated pause, the young man replied, "I can't promise anything. The plant is insanely rare and a nightmare to track down." Lightly touching the flower, he said, "The pot is mine, but I have no idea how to cultivate it, though I know someone who can, but it'll take a month." The hero's thoughts flashed to his mother left behind in the capital as the chief demanded, "What's with the long delay?" To secure help from his mysterious contact, the young man explained with a sly grin, "It's a 3 or 4 day journey just to reach them. In exchange, however, I need a promise from you, Kakantier, that you will grant my request." Lighting a cigarette, the man's voice was low and serious. "Name your price," he said, steeling himself for an outrageous demand. Jan was resolute. "During the negotiations with the Brock family, I am to be given top priority. Not my father, Count Durgi." Suspicion sharpened the leader's gaze. "Are you really trying to sideline the Baron?" To which he simply answered, "The strongest will take the lead." A slow, knowing grin spread across his face as he finally grasped the kid's angle, the sheer audacity of his play for the county. He then pointed out, "It'll be hard to just hand you the reins to the negotiation when you command no soldiers and control no food supply." For a split second, Jan was visibly stunned, having genuinely expected the chieftain to accept his proposal without a fight. Closing his eyes for a moment, he collected himself and decided to drop the bombshell he'd been holding back. Hoping this would finally sell them on his play, he revealed, "Soon the Imperial Palace will dispatch the Inquisition. The crime will be high treason for tax evasion." Unable to process the information, Kakantier shot back, "Is that for real? And how in the hell would you know something so dangerous?" The hero calmly explained that he had gotten the intel firsthand from the central government officials who came to check on me before the ceremony. The leader leaned forward, completely hooked. "What happens if the Brock family collapses? Won't you be caught in the fallout from all this?" A sly smile touched the hero's lips as he acknowledged the valid point before admitting, "While I am Durgi's son by blood, the official documents say otherwise." Hearing that he wasn't technically a member of the Count's family sent a shockwave through Balam and the chieftain. Understanding the gravity of his words had finally sunk in, the hero crossed his arms and stated with icy calm, "The Empire has no legal grounds to charge me with treason. I'm not part of the family." His mind flashed to the Baron's obscene wealth. He declared, "I can become the head of this family if the cards fall in my favor." The realization hit Kakantier like a punch to the gut. The Count had sent his unofficial son, a ghost on paper, to deal with them. The old fox had played them completely. Doubling down, the young man stressed, "I am Durgi's son," adding pointedly, "I trust you'll make the wise decision." Staring intently at the hero, the leader took a nervous drag from his cigarette, his silence thick with a storm of doubt. A mix of anger and undeniable curiosity flashed in his eyes. He finally broke the silence. "Is that everything? Or are you holding more cards?" Pushing himself up from the table, the young man said, "I know you don't trust me, but I decided to lay everything on the table. No lies about what's coming for us. Gesturing to the map, he explained. When my father dies, and the territories are left without a ruler, your clan will need to rally its warriors for an invasion. In a dead calm tone, he added, the heavenly warriors won't need to worry about the imperial troops. They won't make a move. Sliding a piece across the map, he assured them, you won't have to face the desert's elite soldiers, and even if you fail, the hero laid it all on the line, vowing that if the community followed his lead, he would guide their clan back to their homeland. He hoped the chief and the others would back his play. After hearing the young man out, Kakanir saw the logic. There was basically no downside for them, but he still couldn't pinpoint the real upside to this kind of team-up. He shot a questioning glance at Yang, his eyes demanding a better sales pitch, something that would truly seal the deal. Slamming his palm down on the map, the kid made a bold claim, make him head of the county, and he would transform it into the most booming territory they'd ever seen. He promised that the warrior clan who backed him would unlock the true power of an alliance and cash in on some serious perks. He locked eyes with the chief, his gaze intense. The time for fighting amongst themselves was over, he declared. It was time to build something powerful together. He proclaimed them two leaders ready to usher in an era of peace, and proposed they cross swords to forge a real alliance. But just then, Balami, lurking behind the chief, jumped in, warning them about one massive problem they were overlooking. If a call for aid came from Virga to move against the imperial palace, their hands would be tied. They couldn't refuse. A pact was a pact after all. A sly grin spread across Yang's face as he revealed he had the perfect excuse, a loophole that would let them tear up that old agreement and walk away completely clean. The chief took a long drag from his cigar, the smoke swirling as he weighed the kid's proposal, staying silent, calculating every possible angle of this new alliance. Thinking back to the pouch of gold his mother left, the young man spoke up. His own father had given him a mission, a test tied to his future. He was supposed to return next year with a stash of Garuda leaves, a direct order to smuggle contraband into the country. He stared at the chief, a hopeful glint in his eye, and spelled it out. Garuda tobacco is illegal. That's not something you can just sweep under the rug. He leaned in, asking if that wasn't a good enough reason to ditch the old deal he had with his father. Kakanir let out a hearty laugh, admitting it was a solid point. But that alone wasn't nearly enough to just cancel a sworn pact. His curiosity piqued, he pressed. You got any proof? Yang admitted there was no hard evidence, but Vincennes could verify his story. The chieftain's eyes narrowed into slits as he challenged him. Swear on your god. Without a single flicker of doubt, the young man shot back that he was ready to do it right then and there. The chief's booming laughter shattered the insane tension that had been suffocating the room. He had always thought all the Brockie were just thick-headed fools, but this kid was something else entirely, someone worth watching. With his arms crossed, the hero stood his ground, waiting for the final verdict. The chief finally broke the silence, asking if all he needed was their clan's support. After getting a firm yes, Kakanir declared he'd handle it. Their swords clashed in the air, sealing the pact with the ring of steel. The chief then asked for permission to ask one more thing, wanting to know why. Why did the kid want all of this? What was his real endgame? Yang gathered his thoughts, ready to unveil a future overflowing with danger and epic new challenges just for him. His finger traced a line on the map as he announced his next move. He was heading to the capital. To be exact, to the county that was tied to his family's legacy. Kakanir listened, his focus absolute, hanging on every word, as the young man explained that the Brockie clan would be his one and only sanctuary. Kakanir slammed his fist on the table, wanting to get one thing crystal clear, so there'd be no drama later. He growled that his clan had zero intention of bleeding out for Yang's personal war, and Yang, cool as ever, replied that he wouldn't want that either. Shocked, the chief pushed, asking if the kid had no fear of death, especially since he was betting his life at every single turn. The hero's voice was pure steel as he answered that he wasn't afraid in the slightest, because he had already stared death in the face and won. Memories flickered in his eyes as he revealed that his life had already ended once, but now he'd been given a round two. A slow smile spread across the chief's face as he took another puff of his cigarette, watching him, acknowledging the raw courage and grit radiating off the kid. Extending his hand, Kakanir admitted he was seriously impressed by Yang's guts and had earned his deepest respect. Just as the hero was turning to leave, the chief called out his name. The young man paused, looking back with a question in his eyes. The chief leaned forward, his voice low. This little trip to the capital, does it have something to do with the emperor? He waited, his gaze sharp. Yang didn't say a word. He just turned, and the fierce, unyielding look in his eyes, caught by the sunlight, said everything that needed to be said. The moment he stepped outside, the crowd buzzed, completely stunned that the stranger made it out alive. Even Barrick couldn't believe his partner was still standing. Suddenly, the young man's head snapped around his eyes, scanning the crowd like he was looking for someone before he bellowed Sue's name. Every head instantly whipped toward the girl. She froze on the spot, completely blindsided by the sudden spotlight. He strode right up to her and asked for her help, but she just stared back, totally clueless about what he could possibly need from her. Yang gave her the signal to start training Barrack, and a blush immediately crept up the girl's cheeks, her eyes igniting with a strange new fire. A moment later, she was a whirlwind of curses and brutal strikes. The guy was completely on the defensive, just trying to survive each new wave of her assault. Swinging back, the orphan snarled at her to back off, but his words only fueled her, and her attacks grew even more ferocious. While Sue was putting her partner through the ringer, our hero was just chilling in the shade, observing the intense session and quietly gathering his strength. Before they set off his concern for his friend, showing he asked if he was alright, but Barrack just snapped, demanding he drop it. As the intense spar raged on, Yang found himself cracking a smile. His bodyguard's relentless stubbornness was actually pretty damn funny and low-key cute. Okay, so it was a little risky, but the hero was banking on his ability to slowly but surely win the entire clan over to his side. But thanks to Silask, the whole timeline just fast-forwarded. It suddenly hit him that it had been forever, since he'd thrown himself so completely into a single cause, losing himself in the mission. But the more he dug into his past, the more twisted and dark his present reality and future path began to appear. Later, he went to visit Vice-Chancellor Vincent, and taking a seat by the old woman's bedside, he prepared to just listen. He couldn't help but notice she looked worlds better, and the sight filled his heart with a pure, unadulterated joy. Suddenly, she began speaking in the ancient tongue of the clan, and Kakanir quickly translated, because this was a conversation that everyone needed to hear. With a faint smile, the young man confirmed the truth of her words, spoken to the chief, swearing to God that not a single syllable was a lie. Then Vincent dropped a bomb. God himself had commanded her to completely change her perspective on him, a confession that left everyone in the room absolutely stunned. Hearing this, Yang just froze, his mind reeling, trying to figure out how to even begin to interpret such a wild statement and what his next move should be. His eyes were wide, completely lost in this new prophecy, terrified of messing up his future plans by making one wrong move. Clasping her hands as if in prayer, she warned him that his entire life might be about to be flipped completely upside down. After processing her words, the young man came to a single conclusion: this was a genuine divine revelation from on high. The clan of otherworldly warriors typically trusted their shamans way more than any temple oracle, but this was something else entirely. A soft glow began to emanate from the old woman's hands as if she were cradling pure starlight in her palms, refusing to let it fade. Closing his eyes, Young replayed her prophecy in his mind, desperately trying to decipher its secret, profound, and hidden meaning. Later, while he was unwinding in his tent, the girl brought him a bowl of strange yellow berries, urging him to try them. As he thanked her, he noticed she was flustered, admitting that it was truly no trouble at all, and that she would happily fulfill any request he had. The stranger then let him know that the servants were putting together a massive feast, specifically in his honor, a tribute for having saved Madame Vasson from the brink of death. As she left, she called him their savior, and Yang couldn't help but smile, thanking her once more for her kindness and incredible generosity. With a deep bow, she informed him that the chief was waiting to finalize the details of their agreement, and the young man promised he would be there shortly. His gaze drifted back to Barrack's training, thinking they were done. But the orphan, after taking a hard shot to the face, roared that this fight was far from over. The servant bowed again, and promised to relay his message to Kakanir, while Yang himself stayed behind, captivated by the raw intensity of the fight. Just as she was about to depart, she stopped dead in her tracks, a crucial memory flashing in her mind. She struggled to find the right words to explain herself, clutching an object in her hand. She explained she discovered it tucked away in a flower pot, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and excitement. His eyes widened, and the young man instantly knew it had to be a necklace. What other kind of treasure could be concealed so easily in the palm of a hand? Revealing the stunning piece of jewelry, the servant asked if it truly belonged to Yang, or if it was some other person's lost chain. Taking the medallion into his own hands, the hero was mesmerized, studying the stone for what felt like an eternity, trying to identify the impossible jewel, and figure out how in the world it ended up in his possession. Even in his past life as an emperor, he had never witnessed such breathtaking beauty, and couldn't fathom where this otherworldly piece of jewelry could have possibly originated. He couldn't wrap his head around how a dirt-poor kid managed to grow a silac, or why this priceless necklace was just chilling in a flower pot. It suddenly dawned on him that if he had known about this treasure, he would have sold it in a heartbeat for a fortune, and would never have been forced to endure such a miserable life of poverty. His eyes fell upon the lily, and he made the connection the jewelry must have been hidden by the same person who had entrusted him and his mother with the care of this very plant. Racking his brain, he realized his memories were just scattered fragments, and there was absolutely no one left to ask for answers, except for some shadowy figure that lingered at the edge of his thoughts. He also thought of Hannah and his mother, replaying their words and actions, trying desperately to assemble the broken puzzle pieces of his past into a single coherent picture. Staring at the stone, he prayed that this newfound treasure wouldn't completely derail his master plan, or forcibly alter the path he had so carefully chosen. Out of nowhere, Barak appeared at his side and asked what he was up to, his eyes filled with genuine curiosity as he tried to see what had his friend so utterly captivated. Yang tucked the ornament away, asking casually, "So did Su juice you up with some new powers?" But his friend just shook his head, saying they were on the same level now. Clasping the chain around his neck, he gave the nod to his bodyguard. It was time for their sit-down with the clan chief and his right-hand man. A thought flickered through his mind. He really needed to pick his friend's brain about the legendary warriors of the desert. He was dying to know what his buddy had heard about their insane feats, especially since Barak was obsessed with becoming the strongest dude on the planet. But one look at him told Yang everything he needed to know. His friend had a massive climb ahead of him. A small smile touched his lips. He was stoked, knowing that one day his partner would absolutely crush it and make those dreams a reality. As golden sunlight spilled over the clan's settlement, he couldn't help but think that his master plan was unfolding perfectly. With that settled, he shifted his focus to the next critical step, one that required some serious prep time. In that exact moment, sheer chaos erupted in Brack County as the butler crashed into the Baron's office, screaming and shattering his concentration. Utterly infuriated, Durgi roared at the servant to shut it while he was working, demanding to know what could possibly be so important. Stuttering and terrified, the manager choked out that the tax police from the capital had just rolled up and that the Baron needed to get downstairs and see it for himself. The news hit him like a physical blow. By the time he got there, soldiers had already flooded the entire grand hall of his massive estate. A cold, heavy dread began to settle in his chest. At the very front of the invading force stood Captain Betty Erica of the tax police. Her piercing, razor-sharp gaze immediately set her apart from the grunts behind her. Her eyes methodically scanned the room, absorbing every single detail, as if searching for the ghost of a secret she knew was hidden there. When her gaze landed on the Count, she strode towards him. He managed to introduce himself with a calm voice, even though a storm of pure terror was raging inside him. Flashing her official documents, Betty declared they were there on direct orders from the Emperor. The charges were embezzlement and high treason. The Baron's hand shot out, gripping the banister as he yelled that it was all a load of garbage and lies. He couldn't wrap his head around it. The king would never sign off on something like this. He dramatically placed a hand over his heart, swearing he'd spent years defending the Empire from barbarians. And this was the thanks he got. But Erica had zero time for his excuses. She was just a soldier following an order, one she intended to see through to the bitter end period. She thrust the paper at him again, tapping the bottom. "Isn't this the official seal of House Durgi?" Forcing the Baron to look closer, he saw the document wasn't just an order, it was a full-blown confession where the Count himself admitted to every crime. It even included a formal request for an official investigation. Staring at his own seal, the man's world tilted on its axis. His mind reeled, how in the hell did this document even exist? Who had the audacity to forge his name? Pacing down the lavish hallways, the captain remarked on how beautiful the house was, adding with a hint of pity that she hated it had to come to this. As the Baron continued to lose his mind, she flatly informed him that for the duration of the investigation, her unit would be living there and running the show. Betty then made it crystal clear that Durgi and every single one of his staff were now under her command. Their personal feelings on the matter were completely irrelevant. Turning on her heel, Erica started up the stairs and ordered her soldiers to get moving. Their first stop, the Count's private study on the top floor. Suddenly, a hand shot out and grabbed her arm. It was one of her men telling her to follow him, gesturing like he already knew a secret path through the mansion. The Baron watched, completely stunned. How could these people, who'd never set foot in his home before, know the exact location of his study? Then it hit him. Someone talked. Someone on the inside had spilled all his secrets. His rage flared, refusing to believe it could be Moline. The old man was always lurking nearby, but the suspicion took root and grew. How else could anyone have gotten his personal seal? The traitor had to be one of his most trusted servants. His old secretary was out of commission, deep in a coma. And then a chilling memory surfaced. Moline had specifically asked to meet with Jan, his son, completely alone with no witnesses. An image of his son's smiling face flashed in his mind, and an ice-cold dagger of a thought stabbed him in the heart. The informant could be his own kid. The realization was a gut punch. He was horrified, unable to accept that his own flesh and blood was capable of such a deep betrayal. A guttural roar of pure fury erupted from his throat as he screamed his son's name, the sound echoing ominously through the vast estate. It sent a shockwave of fear through every servant and soldier in the house. The next day, a rider from Bracha galloped into the camp of the otherworldly warriors. Brandishing his lord's flag, he demanded to see their leader. Kakander looked on, completely bewildered. He asked if Baron Durgi himself was actually asking them for help, a move so unexpected it was almost laughable. The messenger explained that the Count had been sold out to the Emperor, and his home was being torn apart by a treason investigation. The chieftain's face grew hard as stone. "Where is the proof this is a frame job?" he demanded. "Is the Baron asking us to declare war on the throne? Because if these accusations were true, siding with the Baron would make the entire clan an enemy of the Emperor, and that was a death sentence he refused to sign." But the messenger stood his ground, vowing that his master Durgi was prepared to prove his innocence. The price, his own son, John's life. The chief, who had been moments from executing the man, was completely floored by the declaration. How could any father offer up his own flesh and blood just to save his own skin? The messenger himself looked utterly bewildered. He had no idea why his master had issued such a chilling command. After a tense silence, Kakanir announced that he understood the situation, but he was tabling the discussion for now, refusing to give a final verdict. The messenger tried to press the issue about Yan, but the chieftain cut him off, telling him to handle it as he saw fit and to stop bothering him with it. He did add, however, that the young man was a hostage for peace, and his clan had zero plans to execute a warrior who'd been living in their midst for so long. Gripping his sword hilt, the messenger declared that the count had prepared him for this exact outcome, and he was duty-bound to see his orders through. A sly smirk crept across the chief's face as he agreed, giving him the green light to proceed. He was intensely curious to watch this drama unfold. A short time later, the hero himself stepped into the hut, his eyes immediately locking onto the warrior beside the chief. He knew instantly that this tense meeting was all about him. Kakanir gestured toward the messenger. This night, Kakanir's voice echoed in the hut. Is here on a mission to kill you, ordered by your own father. A cold smile touched the young man's lips. He replied that he'd expect nothing less from Durgi, being long accustomed to his father's monstrous cruelty. Completely thrown, the warrior demanded to know why the leader was calling Yan Sir and what was actually going down. With another one of his mysterious smiles, the chief simply stated that he had merely provided the stage for this execution. He refused to elaborate, clearly knowing far more than he was